Chapter 783. Lin Sun was safe and sound, which made Ku Tong even angrier. Gritting his teeth so hard that they almost broke, he jumped up into the sky. Bastard, the power of the ancient formation didn't kill you. Let me send you to hell myself. His voice was cold and creepy. His body, which was as thick as a bucket, was like a coiling dragon, filled with two kinds of horrifying power: bitterness and glory. The void collapsed, producing a roar. This was the power of a half-step king. Once it was used, the wind and clouds moved in all directions, and the destructive aura covered the sky. This old monster seems to hate that kid to the core, and he wants to kill him. Many powerful warriors were horrified, and they all dodged, not wanting to be affected. Brother Lin is in danger. Xia Xiaocheng's hands and feet were cold, and her pure and beautiful face was full of worry. It's over. Ku Tong is angry. Now no one can save that kid. Little girl, let's run away together. The pig demon was not loyal at all. He wanted to run away, and this guy was very shameless. He didn't give up and even wanted to take Xia Xiaocheng with him. But at this moment, a calm voice sounded in the pig demon's ears. Okay, run away. You'd better not be caught by me. The pig demon's body stiffened, and he looked up in horror. Under the night sky, Lin Sun's treasure ship lightly flashed and avoided Ku Tong's horrifying attack. He seemed to be very calm and not embarrassed at all. What made the pig demon's scalp numb was that a strand of soul consciousness power swept out from the treasure ship and firmly locked on him. He couldn't escape at all. Obviously, if he dared to run away, the consequences would be unimaginable. Child, I was just joking. How could I do such a dishonorable thing? Child, don't get distracted again, lest you get hurt by that Ku Tong. The pig demon patted his chest and said with a determined look. Humph. Lin Sun didn't bother to pay attention to this immoral pig demon anymore and focused on the battle. Boom! The void collapsed horribly, and the angry Ku Tong showed no mercy. His body swayed in the void, and he started to attack Lin Sun. Its attacks were extremely overbearing and violent. Its body that was thick like a bucket swept out like a divine dragon, swinging its tail. Everywhere it passed, space collapsed while violent divine radiance swept out, and it blasted the layer of clouds apart. It was a boundlessly terrifying sight. All of the experts were shocked. Old monster Ku Tong was too powerful. Even among half-step kings, he could be considered a peak existence. All of them suspected that this old freak had probably touched the threshold of the king realm, and he was only a step away from breaking through to become a true king. Lin Sun steered the vast universe arc to dodge. It was like he was flying through stormy seas. Although it seemed incomparably dangerous, he was always able to avert disaster every time. This was the marvelous aspect of the vast universe Arkansas. Without the suppression of the ancient array spells, let alone old monster Ku Tong, even the attack of a true king could be avoided. This is definitely a strange treasure with marvelous power. Many experts noticed this was strange, and they couldn't help but exclaim with surprise. Could it be that this kid relied on this treasured vessel to deal with the attacks from the ancient formation? Thinking of this, many experts became envious. In the void, old monster Ku Tong became even more furious. His face was livid, and his killing intent soared into the sky. Previously, when he attacked with his full strength, he was actually unable to kill Lin Sun in one move. On the contrary, Lin Sun avoided his attacks again and again. This made him feel ashamed. Who was he? The #1 great beast of the Purple Ox Mountain, a half-step king. He had shaken the world for many years, and he didn't even put ordinary half-step kings in his eyes. But now he attacked with his full strength, but he couldn't do anything to a Tao Insight Realm youngster. If news of this spread out, where would his face go? Die! Old monster Ku Tong roared, and black and white chi appeared on his thick body. One represented the power of life, and the other represented the chi of death. They fused together and finally condensed into a strange black and white divine rainbow that shot out like a bull and swept across the sky. This was too terrifying. It made the scalps of the experts in the distance go numb, and they had no choice but to retreat far away. In this area of 100 Li, besides Starfall Mountain, all the other mountains have been crushed and collapsed. The ancient trees were uprooted along with the soil, and then collapsed into powder. At this moment, the monstrous might of a half-step king was vividly displayed, and it caused the heavens and the earth to dim down. However, even if it was such world-shocking might, it was still unable to kill Lin Sun, and he controlled the vast universe arc to swiftly dodge it. How could this be possible? All the experts were flabbergasted. This greatly overturned their understanding. A youth at the Tao Insight realm had merely relied on a treasured vessel to easily dodge the numerous attacks of a half-step king, and this seemed to be too inconceivable. Could it be that the treasured vessel is a divine treasure that surpasses the scope of the king realm? Some cultivators guessed in their hearts, and they were extremely tempted. If it wasn't for this, it would be utterly impossible to explain the scene before their eyes. Little bastard, I don't believe I'm unable to kill you. Old monster Ku Tong's furious roar was like a thunderclap that surged through the heavens and the earth, and it caused the expressions of all the living beings in this area to turn pale and shiver. He was obviously infuriated to the limit, and he killed to the point his eyes had turned red. For a time, the heavens and the earth were collapsing, and the scene of destruction caused rocks and sand to fly about could be seen everywhere. At the same time, Lin Sun let out a clear and resounding howl that swept through the heavens and the earth. Fellow Taoists, I feel rather guilty for triggering the restrictions of the ancient formation earlier and causing all of you to be affected. So, I've decided to draw this old bastard away right now and strive for an opportunity for all of you to ascend the mountain and seize fortuitous encounters. Take it as my compensation. All the experts in the surroundings were stunned, and their expressions became strange. This kid that's full of evil tricks is actually so kind? After that, all of them had a flash of inspiration in their hearts. If old monster Ku Tong was drawn away, then it would be a rare opportunity for them to ascend a mountain. Perhaps they would even be able to seize this opportunity to seize some fortuitous encounters. Everyone, there's a trap in all of this. That kid is black-hearted and bold. His words seem to be spoken beautifully, yet he's actually speaking to old monster Ku Tong. Someone sneered. Sure enough, old monster Ku Tong's expression became even more gloomy, and he was angered to the point his face turned livid by Lin Sun's words. You want to draw this king away and gain benefits for those fellows? You're simply audacious and arrogant to the extreme. Old monster Ku Tong roared, and then he opened his mouth and spat out a black and white spear that tore through the sky with a swish towards the vast universe Arkansas swish. The sky was easily torn apart, and that spear flowed with black and white divine radiance. It was strange and terrifying, and it possessed an extremely terrifying penetrative force. However, Lin Sun didn't intend to be entangled with old monster Ku Tong since long ago, and he controlled the vast universe arc to swiftly fly towards the distance. Where do you think you're going? Old monster Ku Tong was enraged to the point he was on the verge of going mad. If he were to allow this kid to escape in public, then he, a half-step king realm expert, would surely become the laughingstock of the world. At the same time, Lin Sun spoke out as well, and he reminded all the experts present. Everyone, there's only one chance. All of you must make the best use of your time. The gazes of all the cultivators present flickered, and their expressions changed indeterminately. They paid close attention to old monster Ku Tong to see if he would abandon Starfall Peak and pursue Lin Sun. The enraged old monster Ku Tong also noticed this scene, and he was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. However, he had to consider whether it was worth it to pursue Lin Sun. If he pursued Lin Sun, it would definitely give the other experts the opportunity to ascend Starfall Peak. If he didn't pursue Lin Sun, he would be very unwilling and resentful in his heart. What should he do? Old monster Ku Tong was somewhat at a loss, and he was so angry that he almost went mad. This kid was simply too despicable and shameless. Previously, he had used the ancient restriction to frame him. And now, he even used his determination to obtain Starfall Peak to bewitch the other cultivators and put him in a dilemma. Old thing, aren't you very awe-inspiring? Come, 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 let's change places and have a good spar. Lin Sun shouted loudly, and his tone was full of provocation. All the cultivators present gasped. This kid was really arrogant. He actually dared to challenge a half-step king realm expert like this. Was he not worried that something bad would happen to him? Old monster Ku Tung was completely enraged. As if he had gone mad, he swayed his long and thick body and rushed towards Lin Sun in the distance. Hee, you're really obedient. Not bad, not bad. When I kill you later, I will give you a dignified death. Lin Sun's voice was leisurely, and it floated in the air. As he spoke, he did not slow down at all. He drove the vast universe arc away with all his might. You're courting death. Old monster Ku Tung let out an earth-shaking roar and attacked with all his strength. But to Lin Sun's surprise, old monster Ku Tung was not targeting him, but a powerful cultivator on the ground. It was an alien beast, and it was secretly approaching Starfall Peak. It wanted to take this opportunity to ascend the peak first. Obviously, it was very tempted by Lin Sun's proposal, but did not expect that old monster Ku Tung would abandon Lin Sun and directly attack. Boom! In an instant, the area was intertwined with black and white divine light. The alien beast did not even have time to resist and was killed on the spot. In the distance, some of the powerful cultivators who were planning to ascend the peak saw this, and they were instantly shocked. Their expressions changed, and they quickly retreated. Do you really think I'm an idiot? I'll give up the great fortune of Starfall Peak for a little bastard? You idiots, you don't even know that you're being used by that little bastard. You're really stupid. Old monster Ku Tung's face was livid, and he scolded coldly. Only then did the powerful cultivators in the distance notice that Lin Sun's figure had long disappeared from the void. Obviously, he had taken this opportunity to escape. In an instant, the expressions of the powerful cultivators turned ugly. Sure enough, that black-hearted kid did not have good intentions at all. He was using them to restrain old monster Ku Tung, so that the latter did not dare to rashly leave Starfall Peak. Damn it! Some of the powerful cultivators were so angry that their faces turned red. They were led by the nose by a junior, and they did not even know that they were being used. It made them lose face. Oomph. Old monster Ku Tung was originally furious, but when he saw the extremely embarrassed expressions of the powerful cultivators, he felt inexplicably at ease. This kind of feeling was probably like he had fallen into the water, and at the same time, he had dragged a group of people down with him. Everyone was miserable, and they had lost some face. Naturally, they would not laugh at each other. But the moment he thought of Lin Sun, old monster Ku Tung was furious. In the end, he turned around angrily and returned to Starfall Peak. It could not be helped. Lin Sun had already escaped, and it was impossible to chase after him. Even if old monster Ku Tung had a stomach full of hatred, he had nowhere to vent it. Little bastard, don't let me see you again. Chapter 784. At the same time, on the vast universe arc, Lin Sun was not happy at all. Instead, he felt a little regretful and unwilling. Originally, he really intended to lure Ku Tung to a remote place and then kill him with insignificant bow. But he didn't expect that Ku Tung, who was furious, still didn't give up the opportunity on Starfall Peak and didn't chase after him. Young master, you are both wise and brave, and your skills are exceedingly high. This old pig's horizons have truly been broadened today, and I'm extremely impressed. Please accept this old pig's bow. Next to Lin Sun, the pig demon bowed solemnly, and his face was full of admiration. Crack! Lin Sun slapped him on the back of the head and said coldly, "Don't flatter me. Don't think I don't know that you will be happier than anyone else if I meet with an accident this time." The pig demon bared his teeth and touched the red and swollen back of his head. He said with an aggrieved face, "Child, you really misunderstood me. How can I be an ungrateful person?" Shameless. Even Xia Xiaochong couldn't stand it anymore. She gave the pig demon a supercilious look. This guy had no moral integrity. He had been thinking about how to escape before. The pig demon didn't feel ashamed at all. He still looked sad and sighed. Alas, it seems that the little lady also misunderstood me. Why don't we talk alone? As he said, he looked at Xia Xiaochong with a hopeful face. Xia Xiaochong was startled. I don't want to talk with a pig alone. It's too scary. This pig demon was really a weirdo. He had no moral integrity and was thick-skinned, which made Lin Sun admire him secretly. Xiaochong, there are only 3 days left before the trial. You have to hurry up, Lin Sun suddenly said. Xia Xiaochong was stunned. Her pure little face suddenly wrinkled, and she said painfully, "Oh, I really don't want to hunt monsters. It's too tiring. I don't like the smell of blood." The pig demon next to her immediately flattered her. He patted his chest and said, "Little lady, I'll accompany you. I'm good at making tea and massaging your shoulders and legs. I'm sure you'll be satisfied." Was this still a reincarnation developing realm monster? Lin Sun was almost speechless. Xia Xiaochong said disdainfully, "To think that you're a member of the demonic cultivators. You know that I'm going to hunt down demonic beasts, but not only did you not stop me, you even hit me when I'm down. You're simply too shameless." The pig demon pretended to be righteous. When he was about to say something, he was kicked out of the cabin by Lin Sun. He couldn't stand this guy anymore. He was really shameless. The night faded and the dawn broke. A new day had arrived. The boundless violet Ox Mountain was covered in a layer of mountains and peaks, and they were dyed in a layer of brilliant rays of sunlight and emanated a different kind of vitality. In a valley in the mountains, Xia Xiaochong was holding a silver spear and fighting with more than 10 green-headed fish demons in the stream. Not far away, the pig demon was busy building a fire and boiling water. He planned to throw a few dead fish demons into the pot and cook them to fill his stomach. On the top of a low mountain next to the valley, Lin Sun sat facing the sun. His handsome figure was bathed in the morning light, ethereal and ethereal. Not long after, he woke up from meditation and couldn't help frowning. His cultivation had reached the peak of the Tao Insight realm a long time ago. Recently, he was almost unable to suppress the impulse to break into the reincarnation developing realm. This was what Lin Sun didn't want to see, because he'd taken the path of a supreme king. Even though his cultivation had attained perfection, there were still some flaws in his comprehension and cultivation in the martial Tao. For example, the 9 transformations of the Tribulation Dragons and the 9 strikes for shaking heaven had not been perfected yet. Although the Tao of water he controlled had reached the peak, he still couldn't break through the barrier and step into the higher level of Tao. I must hurry up to refine the power of martial cultivation and the Tao of water. Lin Sun had long known that the power of Tao could only really manifest its power in the reincarnation developing realm. At that time, in a battle between cultivators, the stronger the power of the great Tao that they grasped, the more powerful their own strength would be. After thinking for a moment, Lin Sun took out a simple silver-white scroll. This was the secluded star bug raining technique, a gift from Xiaohao. It was a secret method for raising and using spirit-eating bugs. Thinking of Xiaohao, Lin Sun couldn't help thinking of the mysterious Starfall Peak. The ancient formation full of sacred air, the egg of constellation, and a silent young master of the secluded star imperial clan. All of this seemed to be too miraculous, and it was difficult to understand. Lin Sun took a deep breath and stopped thinking about it. He began to study the secluded star bug raining technique. Several hours passed unconsciously. At noon, Lin Sun closed the secret scroll in his hand, with a touch of shock and amazement in his black eyes. According to the record, the origin of the spirit-eating bug was so amazing that it was listed in the 7th place of the ancient strange bugs list. Once it transformed into the king realm, it could even absorb the 9 serenities chi and devour the souls of kings, which was extremely fierce. In ancient times, there was a spirit-eating bug king that roamed the world and swallowed the souls of countless horrible creatures, which made all the strong people in the world tremble with fear. However, the God-Eater insect clan was extremely rare. It was originally the divine insect clan that protected the Nether Star Imperial clan, yet it suffered a great calamity and was practically annihilated. It caused the rumors related to it to gradually become unknown through the passage of countless years. The 9 spirit-eating bugs in Lin Sun's hand were also found in a mysterious and dangerous place called the Precious Blood Plane in the ancient Wind World. However, he knew very little about the origin of the spirit-eating bugs, and he didn't even know how to raise and use them. But there was no doubt that the spirit-eating bugs were extremely terrible. In these years, they helped Lin Sun kill a lot of strong enemies. For example, in the secret realm of demons, Yu Shaosheng and other saints were devoured by the spirit-eating bugs, and they were seriously injured and died. However, it was not driven by Lin Sun, but by the spirit-eating bugs themselves. Even because Lin Sun didn't know how to control them, he had to seal them all the time and suppress them in his sea of consciousness. But now with the secluded star insect mastery, all this was no longer a problem. The spirit-eating bugs feed on souls. They need to undergo 5 complete transformations before they can step into the stage of the Bug King. And every time they transform, the power of the spirit-eating bugs will have a new change. Lin Sun silently pondered the mystery of the secluded star insect mastery. It turns out that it's wrong to seal them all the time. I must raise them with souls so as to promote their transformation and growth. After a while, Lin Sun pondered for a while and took out the 9 sealed spirit-eating bugs. Then he formed a seal with his hands and covered them with a strange blood seal. This was the secret seal of insect mastery. Only in this way could he control the spirit-eating bugs with ease. Buzzing, the seal containing Lin Sun's own blood seal, was greedily absorbed by the 9 spirit-eating bugs. At the same time, an obscure wave was generated between Lin Sun and the spirit-eating bugs, forming a wonderful connection. At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly had a strange feeling, as if the spirit-eating insects had become his own children. Their happiness, anger, sorrow, joy, and every slight fluctuation of their emotions could be clearly reflected in his heart. This was the mystery of the secret seal of insect mastery. There was a connection between the spirit-eating bugs and the host. Only in this way could he control the spirit-eating bugs with ease and make them work for him. They are very hungry. Soon, Lin Sun captured a wisp of cold emotion, which made him raise his eyebrows and take out a piece of mid-grade congealing jade. This piece of congealing jade originally belonged to Xia Shaochong, but Lin Sun used it in advance. It was full of the souls of fierce beasts. It was undoubtedly the most suitable food for the spirit-eating bugs. Crack! Crack! Before long, a piece of mid-grade congealing jade was devoured by the 9 spirit-eating bugs. It could be clearly seen that there was a crystal luster on their black body, which was the size of a grain of rice, as if they were glowing with vitality. Sleep. When he captured this wisp of spiritual fluctuation, Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned, and then he smiled. It seemed that the needs of the spirit-eating bugs were easy to be satisfied. However, Lin Sun also knew that the transformation of the spirit-eating bugs was very strange. Sleeping was a process of self-strengthening. They're just larvae in the first stage of transformation. I don't know when they will transform into the real king of the spirit-eating bugs. Lin Sun put away the 9 spirit-eating bugs and was also looking forward to it. If one day he could cultivate a real spirit-eating bug king, it would definitely be a big killer that could deter the old monsters in the king realm. But there is still a long way to go. Lin Sun soon shook his head. The spirit-eating bugs needed to feed on souls to carry out transformation. It could be imagined that every time they advanced and transformed, the number of souls they needed to devour was absolutely huge. This made Lin Sun doubt whether he could meet the needs of the spirit-eating bugs in the future with his own ability. Fortunately, for now, Lin Sun didn't have to worry about this. 2 days later, after continuous hunting, Xia Shaochong had filled a mid-grade congealing pearl and transformed it into a piece of mid-grade congealing jade. In these 2 days, Lin Sun didn't stay idle. He wandered around Purple Ox Mountain with Xia Shaochong, looking for traces of fierce beasts, and then hunted them. Taking this opportunity, Lin Sun also filled 2 mid-grade congealing pearls, which could serve as the food of the spirit-eating bugs. Moreover, Lin Sun had already inquired that it was possible to buy congealing jade in all the provinces of Westhung Realm, but the price was extremely high and the quantity was very small, so it was impossible to buy and stock up in large quantities. There was only one day left before the end of the trial. Xia Xiaochong was very happy and clamored to go back to see his master in advance. Lin Sun naturally agreed readily. He needed to inquire about some information about going to Dongsheng Realm, and he also wanted to see what kind of place the fire spirit state was. After all, although he came to the ancient desolation territory, he had been shuttling in the deep mountains and forests these days, and had not seen a city belonging to practitioners. He had long heard that the ancient desolation territory was different from the inferior world. There were many orthodoxies and tens of thousands of clans, and it was extremely prosperous with the legacy and atmosphere of the ancient times. Lin Sun couldn't help but be fascinated by it. Immediately, without any delay, they set off from Purple Ox Mountain to the Fire Spirit State. Chapter 785. Before leaving Purple Ox Mountain, the pig demon was very sad and lonely. He wanted to give Xia Xiaochong a big hug as a farewell. However, when he opened his arms, he was kicked away by Lin Sun. The pig demon screamed and rubbed his buttocks. He didn't look sad at all. "If you don't go now, I'll stew you now." Lin Sun glanced at the pig demon. "Child, people's hearts are made of flesh. We're going to separate soon. Why are you so heartless?" The pig demon sighed sadly. Lin Sun sneered and ordered, "Xiaochong, go make a fire. Let's have a good meal before we leave." Whoosh! As soon as he finished his words, the pig demon ran away as if there was oil under his feet. His speed was so fast that Lin and Xia Xiaochong were a little stunned. Xia Xiaochong wrinkled his nose and commented, "This pig is rotten to the core. Not only is he shameless, but he's also greedy and lustful. He doesn't have the slightest bit of integrity. If my master sees him, he'll definitely castrate him because my master hates perverts like this the most." Lin Sun agreed with Xia Xiaochong's comment on the pig demon, but when he heard the latter part, he couldn't help gasping and hesitated whether he should pay a visit to Xia Xiaochong's master. Fire Spirit State. It was extremely vast like a world, and there were numerous mountains and over 1,000 cities within its territory. Moreover, a myriad of living beings were gathered there. In addition to the 7 most famous forces, 4 sects and 3 clans, there were many other forces and ethnic groups in Fire Spirit State. Just one state was much larger than the territory of Xiao Empire in the mortal world. In the entire Westhung region, there were an entire 1,000+ provinces, and places that were larger and more prosperous than the Fire Soul province were innumerable. In this way, it could be seen how vast and boundless the ancient desolation territory was, which included Dongsheng, Westhung, South Xian, and Big Dipper World. After all, up to now, even the supreme figures who had stepped into the divine path couldn't deduce where the border of the ancient desolation territory was. When he learned this, Lin Sun couldn't help sighing with emotion. He finally understood why the successors of Heaven's Pivot Holy Land, Lingbao Holy Land, and Heaven-Reaching Sword Sect had such a great sense of superiority when they arrived in the mortal world. Compared with the entire ancient desolation realm, Xiao Empire was indeed too small and barren. However, Lin Sun was very clear that although the territory of Fire Spirit State was much larger than that of Xiao Empire, when it came to the real top power, Xiao Empire had many aspects that Fire Spirit State couldn't compare with. For example, the 4 sects, 3 clans, and 7 major forces in the Fire Spirit State didn't have a real monarch. And in the Empire, the current Emperor and Empress, the old priest on the observatory, and the Dean of Green Deer Academy were all terrifying existences that had the ability to turn the world upside down. Not to mention these, even the top 7 clans had no lack of life and death realm kings. From this point alone, it could be seen that Xiao Empire might be located in the mortal world, a barren land in the eyes of the cultivation world. However, in this country, there was a terrifying foundation that outsiders did not know about. Yin capital. The central area of the Fire Spirit Province was the place that countless cultivators in the province yearned for. Every day, countless cultivators would come from all over the Fire Spirit Province. The reason was simple. The four major sects of Fire Spirit State, Thousand Illusion Sect, Green Pine Sword Sect, Lingji Sect, Zhongshuan Sect, and Lu, Wen, and Shao clans, all resided here. It was noon, and Yin capital was bustling with people and carriages. Lin Sun and Xia Xiaochong were strolling on the spacious and bustling street. The buildings in the Flame capital were all bright red in color, and from a bird's-eye view, the entire city resembled a gigantic fiery crystal. The style of the city was extremely distinctive. It was rumored that a long time ago, there was a chaos fire vein buried beneath the fiery capital, and it gave birth to a scarlet flame true dragon. It attained the Tao in one day and broke through the void, and it was called True God Fire Dragon by the people of the world. Of course, it was just a legend, and no one could tell whether it was true or not. However, it was also because of this legend that Yin capital was filled with a mysterious aura of cultivation. I'm selling a cultivation cave abode on Xiuma Mountain, a spiritual spring, 5 acres of spiritual field, and a herb garden for 8,000 mid-grade spiritual marrow. Great news! Within 10 days, Yunyang Martial Club will invite the 37th generation successor of Zhongshuan sect to give lessons and answer questions. The registration fee is only 100 low-grade spiritual marrow. Take a look. This is the Green Sparrow clan's ancestral secret recipe, the Wishful Treasure Pill. It only costs 998 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow. What? You've never heard of this cultivator? Then you're ignorant and ill-informed. During the ancient times, my clan's Wishful Treasured Pill was a miraculous pill that swept through the world. Merely a single pill was able to allow you to stay young forever and never grow old. Hey, my fellow practitioner, don't be in a hurry to leave. Even if you don't need it, you can buy it to please your confidant. Besides, the price is not a problem. It's negotiable. Shouts and peddlers resounded one after another over the street. It was noisy and lively, which was an eye-opener for Lin Sun. He found that there were some creatures of other clans among these peddlers. The descendants of the Cape Or clan with a single horn and green algae hair were dressed as merchants, peddling various elixirs to the passing practitioners with a smile. The beautiful and petite girls of the blue butterfly race, who were only the size of a palm and had a pair of colorful wings, were carrying delicate flower baskets the size of copper coins. They flew on the street in groups and sold the specialty of their blue butterfly race, the passion spirit fruit honey. Not far away, there was a burst of low and melodious musical instruments, accompanied by a vast and ancient chanting. There was a group of musicians of the Sonar clan. They wore animal skin clothes embroidered with patterns of flowers, birds, insects, and fish. They had bronze skin and looked ugly, but they all looked pious and peaceful. They were the wanderers of the cultivation world. They entered the Tao by means of music and left their footprints all over the world. This was a unique way of seeking Tao. In addition, there were also people of the Green Sparrow clan who were good at refining elixirs and the Cloud Dream clan who were good at weaving clothes. Their strange appearances really opened Lin Sun's eyes. The ancient Desolation territory was said to be full of tens of thousands of clans, which was absolutely an exaggeration. Buddy, I just found an earth-shattering treasure a few days ago. It's a piece of yang root left by a strong practitioner of the Dragon Elephant clan in the reincarnation developing realm. This thing is a great tonic. If taken with the dual cultivation method, it will absolutely produce incredible effects. If you need it, I can sell it to you cheaply. A skinny man with shifty eyes came over stealthily. He carried a shell on his back, had mung bean eyes, and a handlebar mustache. He had a unique, wretched, and lascivious temperament. He was a descendant of the Wolf Turtle clan. It was easy to recognize him. This clan was also famous in the cultivation world. They liked to dig graves and rob caves the most. They were called the grave robbers of the cultivation world. Dragon Elephant clan, Yang Root, Lin Sun was speechless. Before Lin Sun could say anything, the man from the Wolf Turtle clan let out a strange cry and fled into the crowd, disappearing without a trace. Before long, the earth shook. A group of men, who were as tall as 10 meters and as powerful as hills, with golden light flowing all over their bodies, rushed over, causing a commotion on the street. They were furious and seemed to be searching for something. Damn it! Where did the grave robbers go? How dare you dig up my grandfather's grave and even cut away the roots of my grandfather? You deserve to die 10,000 times over. The young man in the lead roared, his eyes red. Lin Sun hurriedly dodged, but his expression became strange. He recognized this group of mighty giants. They were the descendants of the Dragon Elephant clan. Obviously, they wanted to capture the man from the Wolf Turtle clan. But what made Lin Sun feel disgusted was that the young root that the Wolf Turtle clan wanted to sell to him was obtained from the grave of the Dragon Elephant clan's powerhouse. Big brother Lin Sun, I'm going back to see Master. Do you want to come with me? Xia Xiaochong asked vaguely. She was eating a roasted mutton that she bought from a vendor from the Crimson Fox clan. Her cheeks were bulging, and her mouth was oily. I'll wait for your news here, Lin Sun said in a low voice. He knew that the trial competition held by the 4 sects and 3 clans of the Fire Spirit State would come to an end today. Xia Xiaochong's master was with the higher-ups of the 4 sects and 3 clans. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun didn't want to visit them rashly. After all, he had taught Wind Void and the others of the Spirit Pearl sect a good lesson in Purple Ox Mountain. If he went with Xia Xiaochong and encountered them, it would definitely cause some unnecessary trouble. Oh, all right. Xia Xiaochong nodded. The two of them agreed on a place to meet, and Xia Xiaochong left. Meanwhile, Lin Sun strolled around the Flame Capital. He had just arrived at the ancient Desolation territory, so he needed to familiarize himself with everything here as soon as possible and integrate into the world. Have you heard? The land of fortuitous opportunity in the depths of Purple Ox Mountain has attracted the attention of more and more powerhouses. I heard that many powerful figures are coming from other provinces. The Dark Parasol Mountains Tao Discussion Lantern Festival is about to begin in half a year. Supposedly, it's unprecedentedly grand, and it's attracted numerous top-rate geniuses from the West Ocean world to compete in it. Unfortunately, we're far from qualified to participate. Damn it. Just now, Fong Linhan, the successor of the 8 Extreme Saber Nunnery from the Profound Water State, won 10 consecutive victories in the martial dojo of the Flame Capital. Moreover, he even said that there's no one in the younger generation of the Fire Spirit State who can fight him. He's obviously bullying us, because there's no one in the Fire Spirit State who can fight him. Although Lin Sun was strolling along the way, he heard a lot of news and rumors. Almost all of them were about the most sensational events in the Fire Spirit State. Lin Sun listened with great interest. Several hours later, he returned along the original road and walked into an inn. This was the place where he and Xia Xiaochong had agreed to meet. However, as soon as Lin Sun walked into the inn, he heard a commotion. Chapter 786. Lin Sun looked up and saw a tall young man with a crimson spiritual sword on his back standing at the center of the hall on the first floor of the inn. There was a group of retainers around the young man. The clamorous shouts came from the retainers. Their gazes all looked towards a closed door on the second floor of the inn. Obviously, Fong Linhan from the Baji Saber Nunnery should be in there. The young expert of the Liu clan, Liu Zaiwen. He actually came to challenge Fong Linhan himself. An uproar resounded in the inn as people recognized the identity of the young man with the crimson spiritual sword on his back. The Liu clan was one of the 4 sects and 3 clans in the Fire Spirit State. It had a long history and great influence in the entire Fire Spirit State. The Liu clan was filled with capable people and experts. Just like Liu Zaiwen, he was a top figure in the younger generation of the Liu clan, and he could be considered as an influential figure among the rising stars in the Flame Capital. There's going to be a show to watch. Many onlookers were very excited. When Lin Sun was wandering in the street, he heard a lot of news about Fong Linhan, the successor of Baji Saber Nunnery. He was from the Profound Water State in the West Hung region. He possessed extraordinary combat strength at a young age, and his talent and foundation could be said to be shocking. Just a month ago, Fong Linhan appeared in the Flame Capital Martial Arts Arena and participated in a challenge. He overcame all difficulties in a domineering manner, experienced hundreds of battles, and defeated hundreds of young experts from different powers in the fire spirit state. Until now, he hadn't suffered a single defeat. This matter quickly caused a stir in the Flame Capital, and practically all the young experts in the fire spirit state knew Fong Linhan's name. The Baji Saber Nunnery was a sect that wasn't famous in the profound water state, but because of Fong Linhan's domineering rise, it instantly became well known. However, to the young cultivators of the fire spirit state, Fong Linhan was an outsider in the end. The more dazzling Fong Linhan's accomplishments were, the more it undoubtedly showed that the young cultivators of the fire spirit state were incompetent. It was even to the extent that this matter was viewed as a humiliation to the young generation of the fire spirit state. Just like the news about Fong Linhan that Lin Sun heard, almost all of it was with prejudice and hostility. However, the more it was like this, the more Lin Sun felt that Fong Linhan wasn't simple. He dared to come to the Fire Lord Prefecture by himself and challenge the experts of the younger generation that belonged to the Fire Lord Prefecture in the flourishing Fire Lord Prefecture. Merely this boldness wasn't something an ordinary person possessed. Fong Linhan, are you afraid? Come out. What? You don't dare to accept the challenge now that you know my young master is here? Aren't you arrogant? You said that no one in the younger generation of the fire spirit state is a match for you. Why don't you come out of your room now? The retainers of the Liu clan were still clamoring, their voices full of provocation. After a long time, a lazy voice came from behind the tightly shut door. A bunch of cats and dogs. Do you think you're qualified to come and shout at me? Hurry up and get lost. Don't disturb my cultivation. Everyone was in an uproar, extremely furious. On the other hand, Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. Based on this voice, Fong Linhan really was arrogant, and he possessed an unbridled, imposing aura. You actually dare to call us cats and dogs? The retainers of the Liu clan were angered to the point of shouting loudly. Even Liu Ziwen, who'd been waiting silently all along, couldn't help but frown at this moment, and a wisp of coldness flashed through his face. He waved his hand to stop the retainers, and then he raised his head to look at the tightly shut door and said coldly, Fong Linhan, if you're afraid, then I'll leave right now. If you dare to accept the challenge, then come out right now. Don't waste everyone's time. Afraid? Fong Linhan's loud laughter sounded out from within the room. His voice was straightforward and carried a wild and arrogant tone. Come to the Flame Capital Martial Arena tomorrow. If I'm unable to defeat you within 3 strikes, then I'll cripple my own cultivation. A wave of gasps resounded in the surroundings. Fong Linhan wasn't just arrogant. He simply considered everyone beneath him and treated Liu Ziwen like he didn't exist. Didn't this mean that with Liu Ziwen's ability, Liu Ziwen would be utterly unable to resist 3 strikes of his? He was too arrogant. Many spectators couldn't bear to watch any longer. Even though an outsider had relied on his strength to obtain some dazzling accomplishments in battle, yet he was so arrogant, and it was truly infuriating. On the other hand, Liu Ziwen's expression had already turned gloomy while cold lights shot out from his eyes. Obviously, he'd already been infuriated. Clang! A crimson-red spirit sword soared into the sky behind him while seething with dazzling divine flames, and it was like an extremely terrifying flaming dragon. There's no need to wait. I'll make you cripple your own cultivation right now. Amidst his icy cold voice, Liu Ziwen stretched out his hand to grab the crimson-red spirit sword, and then his figure flashed as he swiftly charged up to the 2nd floor of the inn. The edge of his sword emanated a wisp of dazzling and resplendent light as it slashed towards the tightly shut door. He wanted to force Fong Linhan to come out and fight him. Everyone present cheered in unison. They felt that Liu Ziwen's actions brought glory to them, and they didn't lose the prestige of the cultivation world of the Fire Soul Prefecture. An ant trying to shake a tree, laughably overestimating your ability. However, before everyone could get too happy, accompanied by a disdainful and arrogant voice, the the tightly shut door suddenly opened wide. At practically the exact same moment, a wisp of a blade light appeared abruptly, and it was like a thunderclap that arose from the ground and was accompanied by the terrifying glow of lightning as it surged out. At that instant, many people felt a piercing pain in their eyes while their hearts trembled, and they were unable to see clearly what was happening. Bang! A deafening sound of collision resounded out as bits of wood flew in all directions. Railings collapsed into pieces, and a terrifying, chaotic flow of lightning raged out, causing some of the furnishings in the inn to transform into powder. There was a defensive formation set up within the inn, yet it was unable to resist or disperse the destructive force of this strike, and this was horrifying. After that, everyone saw Lu Ziwen's figure leave swiftly, yet return even swifter. He was blasted flying by this strike, and he smashed onto the ground with a rumble, causing the floor to explode and reveal a large hole on the ground. In an instant, everyone was shocked and went perfectly silent. The lackeys of the Lu clan were even dumbstruck. Pooh! Lu Ziwen coughed up a large mouthful of blood while his entire body trembled. His chest had caved in, half of his tendons and bones were broken, and most of the clothes on his body were shattered by the lightning, causing him to be charred. His end was extremely miserable. Clang! Only now did his crimson spirit sword fly back to him, and it was stabbed diagonally in front of him while wailing and trembling endlessly. Everyone present was dumbstruck. This was Lu Ziwen, a top figure in the younger generation of the Lu clan, one of the 4 sects and 3 clans. But he was defeated with a single strike, just like this? Many people were unable to accept this fact. It was even to the extent that from the beginning until the end, they utterly didn't see clearly how Lu Ziwen lost. He didn't lose at all. The difference in strength is too great. Lin Sun had always been paying attention from the side, and he clearly saw every single detail of the battle, and he couldn't help but shake his head to himself. Without a doubt, Fong Linhan had sufficient qualifications and ability to be arrogant, but Lu Ziwen didn't have sufficient self-awareness. It was even to the extent that it was very likely that he didn't know Fong Linhan's ability before rashly challenging him, causing him to suffer such a crushing defeat. Of course, Lin Sun was only a side character, and he wouldn't feel ignorant for Lu Ziwen. What really surprised him was that Fong Linhan's strength could indeed be regarded as a peerless genius among the younger generation. He was only in Tao Insight realm, but he possessed extremely terrifying martial arts power. His saber technique, in particular, was extremely powerful and domineering. It must be a great secret inheritance. You can't even take one move from me, and you still talk nonsense about challenging me. You say I'm arrogant, but I think you're the ones who really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Along with the voice, a figure walked out of the room on the 2nd floor with his hands behind his back, leaning against the railing and looking down, his eyes bursting with frightening divine light. His figure was tall and slender, and his thick long hair was loose, revealing a face with evil charm and arrogance. As he spoke, he slightly pursed his lips, forming a perfect arc like the edge of a blade, and his whole body exuded a wild and disdainful momentum. This was not arrogance, but a kind of momentum emanating from the inside out. Only those who were full of confidence in their own strength could have such an eye-catching demeanor. This person is really extraordinary. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and sighed inwardly. Yu Jianming, the future leader of Thousand Illusion Dao sect, had amazed him a few days ago. But now, Fong Linhan's demeanor was not inferior to Yu Jianming at all. In just a few days in Fire Spirit State, he met 2 people with completely different demeanors and momentum, but both of them could be regarded as peerless geniuses. How could Lin Sun not sigh with emotion? The ancient Desolation region was really full of talents, hidden dragons, and crouching tigers. This saber strike is a warning to you. I'm born to be arrogant, but I also know my own limitations, unlike you who are narrow-minded and don't know your own limitations. Fong Linhan's voice was casual, revealing unique arrogance. The inn was silent, and the faces of the practitioners from Fire Spirit State were very ugly. Being reprimanded by an outsider like Fong Linhan made them feel ashamed and annoyed. Suddenly, when Fong Linhan glanced at Lin Sun in the crowd, he seemed to have noticed something, and his thin lips that were like the edge of a blade raised a smile of surprise. Immediately, he looked at Lin Sun with interest and said, "My friend, are you interested in going to the martial arts field of Yin City to fight with me tomorrow?" There was a blazing look in his eyes, which was a kind of joy of finding an opponent. He didn't hide it and seemed very direct. All the people present were stunned and looked at Lin Sun in unison. They couldn't help feeling puzzled and surprised. They didn't expect that Fong Linhan would take the initiative to challenge him at this time. This was too rare. After all, when Lu Ziwen challenged him just now, Fong Linhan didn't take him seriously and was unwilling to show up to fight. But now, the situation was reversed. Could it be that the handsome young man was a peerless person? But he looked very unfamiliar. Which faction's disciple was he from? Everyone was curious and kept looking at Lin Sun. Even Lin Sun himself didn't expect that Fong Linhan would be so direct and make such a move. He couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Immediately, he shook his head. "Let's talk about it when there's a chance." He had already booked a room, and as he spoke, he headed straight for his room. He had only just arrived in the Flame Capital, and he had no idea what was going on here. How could he possibly be interested in sparring with a natural-born maniac? This was too unexpected, and it caused all the cultivators present to be extremely stunned. This fellow actually refused so casually? Was he fearless, or was he afraid in his heart? "It doesn't matter. I'll wait for you." Fong Linhan smiled slightly, and the corners of his lips were slightly raised. Coupled with his wild and unruly temperament, he gave people a strange feeling of evil charm. If only in terms of appearance and temperament, Fong Linhan was indeed an extremely outstanding man. Even if he was thrown into the crowd, it couldn't cover up his brilliance. He would be the most eye-catching one. However, he didn't take it seriously at all after being rejected. There was no sign of his previous arrogant attitude. This reaction made other practitioners more and more puzzled. Chapter 787. Who was that young man? All the practitioners in the inn were keenly aware that since Fong Linhan took the initiative to challenge him, the young man must not be an ordinary person. Thinking of Lin Sun's calm and indifferent attitude in front of Fong Linhan just now, these practitioners suddenly felt that he was unfathomable. Find out who this guy is. Soon, these practitioners in the inn left in a hurry. First, they wanted to find out Lin Sun's background as soon as possible. Second, they really didn't want to stay any longer. Fong Linhan was too arrogant. Just now, he scolded them so much that they were extremely angry. If they stayed, it was no different from asking for a scolding. Fong Linhan ignored those practitioners who left in disgrace, but looked at the room where Lin Sun was. Interesting. In addition to Yu Jiaming, there is finally another worthy opponent in the fire spirit state. With wisps of divine light surging in his eyes, he withdrew his gaze after a while, smiled silently, and turned to walk into his room. Crack! Crack! In Lin Sun's room, there was a burst of cracking sounds. 9 black spirit-eating bugs, the size of rice grains, were eating happily. In just a moment, the only 2 pieces of mid-rank congealing jades in Lin Sun's hand were eaten up. Hungry, the 9 spirit-eating bugs were obviously not full, emitting a wisp of spiritual fluctuation. Lin Sun suddenly had a headache. Although these little guys were only the size of rice grains, they could eat too much. It had only been a few days, but they had already eaten 3 pieces of mid-rank congealing jades. It should be known that a piece of mid-rank congealing jade contained 300 to 500 souls. This also meant that one could only get a piece of mid-rank congealing jade by hunting 300 to 500 fierce beasts with cultivation above sea spirit realm. But for spirit-eating bugs, it only took a moment to eat a piece of mid-rank congealing jade, and they were not full. How could Lin Sun not have a headache? When he was wandering in Yin capital today, he also inquired about it. Different from the mortal world, the practitioners in the ancient land of desolation used spiritual marrow as their currency when trading. 10 high-rank spiritual crystals were equivalent to 1 piece of low-rank spiritual marrow. 100 pieces of low-rank spiritual marrow were equivalent to 1 piece of mid-rank spiritual marrow. 100 pieces of mid-grade spiritual essence was equivalent to 1 high-grade spiritual essence. On the market, a piece of low-grade congealing spirit jade that was filled with spiritual energy would cost about 100 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow, which was the value of a piece of mid-grade spiritual marrow. It didn't seem expensive, but if converted to high-grade spiritual crystals, a piece of low-grade congealing spirit jade was equivalent to 1,000 high-grade spiritual crystals. 1,000 high-rank spiritual crystals were enough for Lin Sun's cultivation for half a month. But in the ancient desolation realm, they could only be exchanged for 100 low-rank spiritual marrow or 1 low-rank congealing jade. It was not hard to imagine how valuable the congealing jade was in the ancient desolation realm. And this was only the value of a low-rank congealing jade. For example, a piece of mid-grade spirit congealing jade required an entire 10 pieces of mid-grade spirit marrow. This was equivalent to 1,000 pieces of low-grade spiritual essence. Lin Sun's face darkened when he thought that the 9 spirit-eating bugs had eaten 3 pieces of mid-level congealing jades in just a few days, which was equivalent to 3,000 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow. The investment was too terrifying. No wonder there were so few spirit-eating insects in the ancient times. Just the cost of raising them was not something that anyone could afford. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. He brought a large number of high-rank spiritual crystals in a wordless tower to the ancient desolation realm this time. But if he exchanged them for low-grade spiritual marrow, he could only get more than 500 pieces, which was equivalent to 5 pieces of mid-grade spiritual marrow. Such a small fortune could only buy half a piece of mid-level congealing jade. The more Lin Sun thought about it, the more depressed he became. They were not spirit-eating bugs, but a group of blood-sucking bugs. I have to make money as soon as possible. After a long time, Lin Sun gritted his teeth and made a decision. It was not only for raising spirit-eating bugs, but also for cultivating in the ancient desolation realm in the future without enough money. Most importantly, spiritual marrow was not just a currency. It was a kind of natural spiritual object containing extremely abundant and pure spiritual energy, which was much more precious than high-rank spiritual crystals. It was a kind of essential item that could completely meet the daily cultivation needs of practitioners in Tao Insight and Reincarnation Developing Realm. The next morning, Lin Sun woke up from meditation and came to the first floor of the inn. He asked for a pot of tea and poured it by himself. He had some doubts in his heart. According to the time, the trial competition held by the 4 sects and 3 families should have come to an end yesterday. But until now, Xia Xiaochong hadn't come to find him. Did something happen? Child, I'm Ma Xingkong, now working for the Xiao clan in Fire Spirit State. May I know your name? Suddenly, a middle-aged man came over and greeted Lin Sun with a smile. Lin Sun smiled and said concisely, Lin Sun. While talking, Lin Sun keenly noticed that there were many practitioners sitting on the first floor of the inn who were looking at him intentionally or unintentionally. Child Lin. Ma Xingkong sat on one side and said in a low voice, Child Lin, I don't want to hide it from you. I came here under orders to ask if you're interested in fighting with Fong Lin Han. Lin Sun was stunned and said, Why did you suddenly come to find me? Ma Xingkong swept the surroundings with his gaze and said in a low voice, Young master, we're already aware of what happened in the inn yesterday. Moreover, I heard that Fong Lin Han even took the initiative to challenge you to a battle, but you refused. Lin Sun suddenly understood and nodded. It's true. Ma Xingkong struck while the iron was hot and said, Young master, if you're interested in having a battle with Fong Lin Han, then regardless of the outcome, my Xiao clan is willing to offer 1,000 low-grade spirit essence as a gift. If you're able to defeat Fong Lin Han. Speaking of this, he pointed with his fingers, the Xiao clan will give you 100 pieces of mid-grade spiritual marrow as a reward. Lin Sun was secretly surprised. He now knew the value of spiritual marrow. 100 pieces of mid-grade spiritual marrow was an extremely generous reward. Of course. Ma Xinkong changed the topic and said with a smile, "The Shao clan only has a small request. If you agree, please fight with Fong Lin Han in the name of the Shao clan." Lin Sun completely understood that the Shao clan wanted to use him as a spear to deal with Fong Lin Han. "I'm sorry, I have something else to do, so I can't agree." Lin Sun refused directly. Although he was currently very short of money, he didn't want to be a knife in the hands of others. Ma Xinkong was stunned. He obviously didn't expect Lin Sun to refuse so directly. He couldn't help but say, "Why don't you think about it again? If you think the reward is too little, we can continue to discuss. I think you know that the Shao clan is one of the 4 sects and 3 clans in the Fire Spirit State, and we have an extremely strong foundation. The reward will definitely not disappoint you." Lin Sun shook his head with a smile. "If money can buy a chance to win, I'm afraid not only the Shao clan, but other forces would have already done so." Ma Xinkong sighed when he saw this, and then he stood up and bid his farewells. However, what made Lin Sun frown was that as soon as Ma Xinkong left, some practitioners came to talk to him one after another. Like Ma Xinkong, they represented different forces in the Fire Spirit State, and they wanted to invite him to fight with Fong Lin Han. Moreover, they all promised and offered extremely tempting conditions. Lin Sun refused all of them without hesitation. "Would you like to have a drink?" Suddenly, a dignified and slender figure appeared, carrying a flagon and a cup, and sat on the seat beside Lin Sun at will. He was dressed in a black robe, with thick black hair hanging down, thin lips as sharp as a blade, and a face with a unique evil charm and arrogance. It was Fong Lin Han, the successor of the Baji Saber Nunnery. "Thank you very much." Lin Sun raised his cup and drank it in one gulp. He was at ease and not bashful at all. This made Fong Lin Han smile slightly, and he poured another cup of wine for Lin Sun, saying, "You look no different from others, but in my eyes, you are different from others. Whenever you are interested, you can come to the martial arts field of Yin City to fight with me." After saying that, he stood up and walked out of the inn with a flagon in his hand. His posture was strong and vigorous, and he had a kind of wanton and arrogant aura. "By the way, I can stay here for half a month at most." Suddenly, Fong Lin Han turned back and reminded Lin Sun. Lin Sun responded with an "oh." Fong Lin Han smiled, turned around and walked out of the inn, and his figure disappeared in the vast sea of people. "Let's go and have a look. This guy is as arrogant as ever. He is going to the martial arts field of Yin City to show off again." Some practitioners in the inn couldn't sit still and left one after another. From the conversations of those practitioners, Lin Sun knew that Fong Lin Han went to the martial arts field of Yin City every morning to fight with the strong young generation of Fire Spirit State after he entered Yin City. He didn't return until dusk. Using battle to nurture battle and train one's Tao? So he's a battle maniac. Lin Sun was lost in thought. After waiting for a few more hours, Xia Xiaochong still didn't appear. Lin Sun frowned. It was not a good way to wait like this. He decided to have a look in person. However, as soon as he walked out of the inn, he heard a burst of exclamations on the street, and almost all the pedestrians on the road looked up at the sky. Suddenly, a huge shadow was cast down from the sky like a dark cloud. In reality, it was a ferocious beast. Its body was so huge that it blocked out all the light in the sky. It had 9 heads, and its body was as huge as a winding mountain. It was covered with golden light, as if it was made of gold. Golden 9-headed dragon. This was a terrifying mutated creature that had an illustrious reputation even in ancient times. It was said that each of its 9 heads mastered a kind of talent secret method, which could control thunder, lightning, wind, and rain, fly in the sky, and dig into the earth. Its magical power was matchless and monstrous. But now, such a golden 9-headed dragon was just a means of transportation, because on its back, there was a palace which seemed to be made of divine iron and immortal jade. The palace was overflowing with dazzling brilliance. It was 300 meters high and looked magnificent and sacred. Chapter 788. The ancient mutated golden 9-headed dragon carried a sacred palace on its back as it soared through the sky. That scene attracted the attention of countless practitioners in Yindu, and then they looked shocked. It was really rare to see such a scene. That's the golden nine-headed dragon, a naturally terrifying creature. Judging from its momentum, I'm afraid it's comparable to the half-step king realm. But now, it can only be used as a means of transportation. Many practitioners exclaimed and felt it was incredible, as if they were witnessing a miracle. Who are those young men and women? Each of them is like an immortal descending to the mortal world. They are not ordinary people at first glance. Some people also noticed that a group of young men and women stood in front of the sacred palace. Each of them was extraordinary and dazzling like stars. To be able to control the golden nine-headed dragon and make it willingly carry a palace, this is not something an ordinary power can do. Which ancient orthodoxy did they come from? Why have I never heard of such a power existing in the Western Hung world? Most practitioners were confused. They had never seen such a scene before, and they had never even heard of such a horrible ancient creature as the golden nine-headed dragon being used as a means of transportation. This seemed to be too shocking. There's no need to guess. They are not practitioners from the West Hung world. If I'm right, they should be from an ancient orthodoxy in the South Xian world that has been passed down for 100,000 years. The pure land of longevity. An old man sighed with emotion, which caused an uproar in the crowd nearby. Even Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. It was too unusual that such an orthodoxy dared to use the word longevity as its name. The golden nine-headed dragon is a terrifying creature that has the potential to become an ancestor or saint. In the entire southern profound world, there are only a few ancient orthodoxies that can subdue it. This pure land of longevity is one of them. The old man's eyes were full of reminiscence, and he sighed with emotion. Look at the palace on its back. It's called the Palace of Longevity. It's 999 feet high, and its whole body is made of Taishian divine iron. It's filled with sacred air. It's a sacred treasure, and there's only one in the whole world. The Palace of Longevity, a sacred treasure. The surrounding area was in an uproar, and everyone's eyes were wide open with fanaticism and shock. In the ancient desolation realm, the sacred figures were like the sun and the moon. They could illuminate the sky with unparalleled power. Usually it was impossible to see them, and the sacred treasure was even rarer. Such a treasure was called the ultimate sacred weapon. It had wisdom and soul, and its power was absolutely beyond imagination. It could easily kill a king. Now, a golden nine-headed dragon was carrying a sacred treasure, and a group of men and women were standing by the railing. In front of it stood a group of men and women. Even a king would not be able to keep calm. Unfortunately, the golden nine-headed dragon quickly vanished into the distance and was unable to be seen again. Only at this moment did the people on the street recover from their shock. I remember now. Some time ago, a friend from the Windspeech clan spread news that a peerless figure from the southern profound world is coming to our West Hung world to pay a visit to the saintess of the profound Sikh sword school. Based on this, that peerless figure wouldn't be from the paradise of longevity, right? Someone cried out in alarm, causing an uproar. It was highly possible that this was true. After all, they had the golden nine-headed dragon as their mount and the immortal hall as their temporary residence. Just this point alone was enough to prove that there must be someone with an extremely special identity among the successors of the pure land of longevity who had come to the Western Hung world. Pure land of longevity, profound seeking sword house. Lin Sun couldn't calm down either. It was impossible to see such a scene in the mortal world. What made him sigh with emotion was that the foundation of the ancient desolation realm was too shocking. He could easily see some sacred people and things, which couldn't be compared to the mortal world. However, after sighing with emotion, Lin Sun frowned slightly with a trace of doubt on his face. When he was looking at the longevity hall on the back of the golden nine-headed serpent, he vaguely saw a familiar figure among the group of men and women leaning against the railing. Unfortunately, Lin Sun was not sure because of the long distance. If it's really her, doesn't it mean that she entered the immortal pure land of southern Xian world to cultivate after leaving the Empire. However, with the talent she showed in the bloodthirsty camp, she is indeed qualified to cultivate in such a holy place. While thinking, the image of a beautiful girl with picturesque eyebrows and eyes emerged in Lin Sun's mind. Brother Lin Sun. Suddenly, a clear voice rang in his ears. Lin Sun looked up and saw Xia Xiaochong running from afar. Her steps were light and her figure was delicate, like a lively butterfly. Lin Sun had planned to take the initiative to look for this girl, but he didn't expect that she would run to him as soon as he left the inn. Brother Lin Sun, did you see that big dragon just now? It's so strange that it has 9 heads. And that palace is as beautiful as the immortal abode in heaven. If I can go there and sit, my life will be worth it. Xia Xiaochong clicked her tongue in wonder, her pure face full of amazement. Crack! Lin Sun knocked on her head and said angrily, "You made me wait until now. Not only are you not ashamed at all, but you also care about these messy things. You are so stupid." Xia Xiaochong held Lin Sun's arm coquettishly, blinked her big clear eyes, and said with a smile, "Oh, I'm here now. By the way, my master said that he will come to see you in 10 days. He asked you to wait first." Lin Sun was a little dissatisfied. Xia Xiaochong's master was too arrogant. They had never met, but he asked him to wait for 10 days. He had wanted to meet Xia Xiaochong's master for no other purpose. He just wanted to know how to go to Dongshang territory. However, now that he had come to Yin capital, he could find out these things by himself. As for meeting Xia Xiaochong's master, it was no longer necessary. The reason why he waited here was that he had promised Xia Xiaochong and couldn't bear to break her promise. This was a matter of keeping his promise. If your master has something important to do, it's fine if he doesn't meet me. But why does he do this? Lin Sun asked. Well, my master said that if you really want to go to Dongshang territory, you should wait here quietly, Xia Xiaochong said casually. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Does your master think that I can't go to Dongshang territory without her help? Xia Xiaochong was indeed a simple girl. She didn't hear the dissatisfaction in Lin Sun's tone at all. She nodded naturally and said, "Oh, you guessed it right. My master thinks so too." And she said that it's not that easy to cross a territory. Lin Sun frowned. Was there something special about going to Dongxing territory from Xing territory? In the end, Lin Sun decided to wait patiently for 10 days. He felt that Xia Xiaochong's master wouldn't deliberately tease him. There must be a reason for her to do so. Brother Lin Sun, let me take you shopping. I haven't been to Yin capital for a long time. While my master isn't here, I must have fun. Otherwise, I don't know when I can come out to play when I return to the sect. Xia Xiaochong looked at Lin Sun with sparkling eyes, her face full of hope. Since he had nothing to do, Lin Sun readily agreed. Xia Xiaochong immediately cheered like a child who hadn't grown up yet. Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh. This girl was really childish. She was as pure as a piece of white paper and couldn't hide any emotions. However, he really liked Xia Xiaochong's carefree character. When he was with her, he felt carefree and relaxed. By the way, what's your final ranking in this sect trial? Lin Sun asked casually. Senior Yu jamming a Thousand Illusion sect naturally deserves the first place. Senior Sister Shui Xiao of Pine Sword sect is second. Senior Sister Wen Ruyu of Wen clan is third. Xia Xiaochong counted on her fingers, her voice clear and melodious as she narrated to Lin Sun. The funniest is the descendants of Lingji sect. They used to rank in the top 3, but in this trial, they were almost always at the bottom. At that time, an elder of Lingji sect was so angry that he was trembling all over as if he was having an epileptic fit. Wind Void and the others were all hanging their heads dejectedly. I laughed so hard that my stomach hurt. At the end of her narration, her innocent little face was filled with a bright smile. Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh as well. Wind Void and the others deserved their bad luck for provoking him. Ranking at the bottom was the best punishment for them. What about you? Lin Sun asked. 59th. Xia Xiaochong was very proud. She raised her little face and looked very proud. Is this something to be proud of? Lin Sun was surprised. Isn't it? Xia Xiaochong retorted. Is it really worth it? Lin Sun was a little speechless. Is it really not worth it? Xia Xiaocheng frowned and read Sanskrit very seriously. Seeing this girl's unconvinced look, Lin Sun was speechless. There were only more than 100 people participating in the trial, but she ranked 59th. Was this really something to be proud of? Lin Sun decided to let this arrogant girl sober up. He said, "If I were your master, I would expel you from my sect immediately. Instead of being ashamed of such a low ranking, you are proud of it. I think you're no different from that shameless pig demon." Xia Xiaocheng was instantly annoyed. She bared her teeth and said, "Why don't you do it if you can? Hey, you're still not convinced?" Lin Sun laughed and said directly, "I'm not afraid to tell you that if I claimed second place in this trial, no one would dare to claim first place. Brag as much as you can." Xia Xiaocheng was very disdainful. She didn't believe him at all. Do you think senior brother Yu Jiaming is a vegetarian? Do you think senior sister Shui Xiao is a vegetarian? Do you think senior sister Wenru Yu is also a vegetarian? How dare you say I'm as shameless as the pig demon? I think you're the shameless one. Being despised by others, Lin Sun might not care about it at all. After all, there were too many short-sighted people in the world. It was inevitable that there would be some ignorant bastards. But being despised by such a simple and naive girl, Lin Sun couldn't stand it. Especially, she even compared him with Yu Jiaming. Thinking of Xia Xiaocheng's fanatical worship of Yu Jiaming in Purple Ox Mountain a few days ago, and how she used Yu Jiaming to attack him, Lin Sun became more and more depressed. Let's go. This time I'll open your eyes and let you know that summer insects can't talk about ice, and sea water can't be measured. Chapter 789. The streets were bustling with pedestrians. In the area not far away, there was a magnificent and rugged building, in front of which hung many five-color banners. Lin Sun was attracted by the words written on the banners. Silver Pheasant Martial Arts Field. The prize money is doubled, and the duel rules are different. In this arena, only the truly strong will be able to stand tall. Friend, the Great World War is coming. Are you eager to rise quickly and become a famous and eye-catching talent? Come on, the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts Field will provide a stage for you to make a name for yourself. Shocking news. Cheng Lishue, a young man from a small town on the border of Fire Spirit Province, has won 39 battles in a row in the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts Field and accumulated 3,900 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow. It is said that Cheng Lishue's amazing performance has attracted the attention of an elder of Green Pine Sword School. If nothing goes wrong, Cheng Lishue will soon become the successor of Green Pine Sword School. There is no doubt that this unknown young man is going to rise. Friend, action is better than being moved. Whether you want fame or profit, as long as you come, our Silver Pheasant Martial Arts Field can satisfy you. The lines of words on the banners were full of temptation and provocation, attracting groups of young men and women to crowd into the building called Silver Pheasant Martial Arts Field, which was extremely lively. Lin Sun also came with Xia Xiaocheng's arm. Martial Arts Field was a place similar to a challenge arena, where people could challenge or be challenged. For practitioners, participating in this kind of confrontation, not only could they practice martial arts with other strong practitioners and sharpen themselves, but also could get a sum of spiritual marrow as a reward if they won. What's more, they could make a name for themselves. And if their performance was amazing enough, it was very likely that they would be chosen by some great sects and be accepted as their successor. This was undoubtedly a great temptation for some young people who were not from ordinary backgrounds but were eager to change their fate. After all, not just anyone in this world had the qualifications to enter those sects and great powers to cultivate. However, the purpose of Lin Sun's coming was very simple. He wanted to hit Xia Xiaocheng's arrogance and make him understand that he had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. But the most important thing was to make money. After realizing that he was so poor that he couldn't even afford to feed spirit-eating bugs, Lin had to shift his focus to making money. The existence of the martial arts field undoubtedly gave Lin Sun a surprise. Here, not only could he hone his martial arts, but he could also earn money. It was practically prepared for him. Young master, May I ask if you're here to spectate or to fight on the stage? Just as he approached the gate of the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts Arena, a young manservant warmly welcomed him. His nose bridge was sharp like an awl, and his cheekbones were deep. He strode forward, and there was a bright silver feather tail on his buttocks. Obviously, this was a descendant of the Silver Pheasant clan. The silver pheasant could also be considered an ancient species. It was shaped like a big silver rooster. This race's combat power was very mediocre, but they were born with excellent talent in the business world. Let's fight on the stage. Lin Sun answered casually. The manservant's eyes immediately lit up, and he enthusiastically led them into the Silver Pheasant martial arts field. Inside the Taoist field was a completely different world. It was extremely spacious, and there were many giant arenas, each of which was set up with a spiritual tattoo formation with excellent defensive power. Around the Taoist field were the audience seats. As soon as Lin Sun and Xia Xiaochong came in, a burst of thunderous sound came to their faces, which seemed extremely lively. In the martial arts field, fierce duels were taking place on the arenas. Treasures were flowing, and secret methods were like tides, gorgeous and colorful. On the other hand, the spectator area was filled with a sea of people. No matter if it was men or women, all of them were shouting and shouting excitedly. They were either cheering for the contestants they supported or feeling sorry for the defeat of a certain contestant. There was no lack of gloating people, and there were also people cursing in exasperation. It was a vivid picture of all the mortals in the world. "It's so lively," Xia Xiaochong exclaimed. Of course, our Silver Pheasant martial arts field can accommodate tens of thousands of spectators. In terms of scale, it's absolutely first class in Yin capital. The manservant was very proud. As he spoke, he led Lin Sun and Xia Xiaochong to the registration office of the martial arts field. "Young master, there are 3 kinds of duel arenas in our Silver Pheasant martial arts field. The first kind is a duel in the same realm, and the winner can get double the reward. The second kind is a cross-realm duel. The winner can get 4 times the reward if his cultivation is low, and the winner can get 4 times the reward. If the winner has a higher cultivation, the reward won't be doubled. The third kind is a duel without rules, regardless of age, cultivation, means, life, and death. In short, there are no rules. The winner can get 5 times the reward in this kind of duel, but he needs to sign a life or death contract with our Silver Pheasant martial arts field in advance. Once there is a death, the Silver Pheasant martial arts field will not be responsible." Speaking of this, the manservant asked, "Which kind of duel do you want to choose, young master?" "The first kind," Lin Sun answered without hesitation. Cross-realm duel was very eye-catching. Lin Sun didn't come here to show off. As the saying went, people were afraid of fame, and pigs were afraid of being fat. It was better to keep a low profile. Moreover, the duel without rules was dangerous. If he met an old monster who didn't play according to common sense, there would be no way to fight at all. Lin Sun came here to practice martial arts and earn spiritual marrow, so he didn't want to take such risks. The manservant suddenly showed a trace of disappointment. This was the most conservative way of duel, which meant that the Silver Pheasant martial arts field could not get much benefit from it. However, the manservant still registered Lin Sun diligently and issued him a nameplate. With this nameplate, Lin Sun could get the reward after the duel. "Young master, are you going to duel on the stage now?" asked the manservant. Lin Sun nodded. The manservant said enthusiastically, "Well, please pay 100 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow or 1 piece of medium-grade spiritual marrow. Do I have to pay?" Lin Sun was surprised. The manservant almost rolled his eyes. He judged in an instant that this must be the first time for the boy in front of him to participate in a duel in the martial arts field. Maybe it was the first time for this guy to come to Yin capital. After all, the rules of duel on the stage in the martial arts field had long been common knowledge, and all the kids in Yin capital knew it clearly. "Young master, this spiritual marrow will be used as a mortgage. If you lose, this spiritual marrow will become the reward of your opponent, and our Silver Pheasant martial arts field will also take 10% of the reward. If you still don't understand, you can observe in the field first, and then decide whether to duel on the stage." The manservant was very disappointed. He felt that it was impossible to earn much commission from Lin Sun, so his attitude became a little perfunctory. And commission? Lin Sun asked. Hearing this, the manservant's attitude became colder and colder, and he nodded weakly. How could Lin Sun not see this? But he didn't want to argue with the manservant. He took out a piece of medium-grade spiritual marrow that had already been exchanged and handed it to the manservant. Then, he left with Xia Xiaochong with a nameplate and headed for the duel area. However, he hadn't gone far when he heard the servant's disdainful, grumbling voice. Humph, another guy who came from some remote village. He doesn't know anything, but he dares to challenge me on the stage. He'll cry when he's defeated. Lin Sun's face darkened. He was despised by the manservant before the duel began. Ha, Brother Lin, that guy looks down on you. Xia Xiaochong laughed heartlessly. Lin Sun said expressionlessly, Don't worry, he will regret it. Number 19, the same realm duel arena. Lin Sun waited quietly. It would be his turn soon. The atmosphere on the same realm duel arena was very cold. In contrast, the atmosphere on the cross-realm duel arena and the unruly duel arena was extremely lively and full of people. Most of the audience's eyes were fixed on those two arenas. After all, these spectators from all races paid money to watch the fun. The same realm duel seemed very normal, far less exciting than the other two kinds of duels. Before long, it was Lin Sun's turn to fight on the stage. The manservant also came. He was responsible for receiving Lin Sun. According to the rules, he had to accompany Lin Sun to the end. However, his attitude was very problematic. He stood there in boredom, looking absent-minded. He didn't expect to earn commission from Lin Sun. He even hoped that Lin Sun would be defeated quickly, so that he could make time to receive other guests. What? Suddenly, the manservant's eyes narrowed. He saw clearly the appearance of Lin Sun's opponent and recognized his identity. He immediately rejoiced in the misfortune of others. The bull tribe's hot-tempered fellow actually came again. This time that kid was doomed. Little girl, the situation is not good. That child's opponent is from the bull clan. His name is Niu Ben. He is tough and violent, and his fighting style is extremely cruel and bloody. Those who fought with him were either seriously injured or dying. It's not uncommon for them to lose arms or legs. The manservant rolled his eyes and said to Xia Xiaochong beside him in a low voice, If you give me some benefits, I might be able to help. Tell Niu Ben to go easy on him. After all, that young master is handsome. If he's disfigured or crippled, the consequences will be too serious. This was taking the opportunity to ask for benefits. Unfortunately, although Xia Xiaochong was a little naive, she was not stupid. She blinked her big clear eyes and said in a clear voice, Really? That's great. Brother Lin is too proud. He said that I, a summer insect, can't talk about ice. I have eyes but can't recognize Mount Tai. I can take this opportunity to wake him up. The manservant was stunned, and a touch of sympathy rose in his heart for Lin Sun. It seemed that this guy was not only poor and ignorant, but also very unpopular with girls. Niu Ben, let go and have a good time with this child. The manservant shouted. This guy was obviously up to no good. He didn't want to waste any more time and hoped that Lin Sun would be defeated and get out of here as soon as possible. On the arena, a tower-like majestic man grinned and showed his snow-white teeth. He stared at Lin Sun opposite him and gave a grim smile. Don't worry, I won't get out of the arena until I destroy this toy boy. He was Niu Ben from the Bull Clan. He had reached the Tao Insight realm. He was not only born with great strength, but also had a loud voice. With a fierce look, he looked at Lin Sun and scrupulously and aggressively. Lin Sun said with a faint smile, Then let's have a game. Ha, I like tough bones like you. It's fun to play with you. I hope you can be tough to the end. Don't let me have a good time before you completely wither. Niu Ben laughed, and his voice was like thunder. The corners of Lin Sun's mouth twitched, and his forehead was full of black lines. What did he mean by being tough to the end? What did he mean by wither before he had a good time? How could he talk like that? Some practitioners around couldn't help laughing when they heard this. Their eyes were full of ridicule and weird, which made Lin Sun uncomfortable. Damn it, he was really misunderstood. What made Lin Sun almost collapse was that, at this moment, Xia Xiaochong waved her pink little fist and shouted in a crisp voice, "Brother Lin, you must be tough to the end." What the hell was this girl doing at this time? Lin Sun was very depressed, and his face became unkind when he looked at Niu Ben. He secretly decided to give the culprit an unforgettable lesson. "Come on." He no longer hesitated and said directly, "Hey, can't you wait to be ravaged?" "Well, I'm itchy all over, and I can't wait to have a good time." Niu Ben laughed and stepped on the arena. With a bang, his tower-like majestic body turned into a shadow and rushed to Lin Sun. Chapter 790. Bang! Niu Ben's robust figure glowed as the image of a bull appeared behind him. It raised its head high into the starry sky, stepped on the mountains and rivers, and seemed capable of shattering the world with its roar. He was from the Bull clan and was born with divine strength. When he utilized his innate secret technique, he revealed an extremely shocking and overbearing, imposing aura. "This kid is finished." The attendant's gaze was filled with pity. Niu Ben could be considered to be an acquaintance of the Silver Pheasant Martial Arena because he'd once trampled on numerous experts here, and his combat strength was extremely ferocious. Being his opponent was undoubtedly a form of misfortune because not only would one be defeated, one would be heavily injured and on the verge of death. Moreover, one would lose an arm or a leg, and one's end would be extremely miserable. The attendant was very sure that if it wasn't for the fact that killing wasn't allowed in a battle of the same cultivation realm, Niu Ben's opponents would have probably lost their lives long ago. Yet now, that young man who was poor to the point women didn't like was bound to become another one of Niu Ben's defeated opponents and be trampled miserably. To the attendant's surprise, the pure young woman by his side carried a wisp of pity just like him, and she seemed to be unable to bear to continue watching. But this pity was directed at Niu Ben, who was on the arena. "This little girl looks beautiful, but she wouldn't be stupid, right?" The attendant was extremely doubtful. Bang! Right at this moment, a world-shaking sound of collision resounded out, and it shook the attendant to the point his ears droned while he saw stars before his eyes, and he staggered and almost fell to the ground. Damn it! Why did Niu Ben cause such a huge commotion as soon as he came up? He wouldn't be intending to cripple that young man with a single strike, right? The attendant grumbled in his heart, but he couldn't be bothered about all this, and he carried a feeling of excitement and anticipation as he shot his gaze towards the arena at the first possible moment. He really wanted to see the tragic end of that young man. This is... When he saw the scene on the arena clearly, the attendant's eyeballs almost fell out in an instant, and he was suffocated to the point his face flushed red. He was like a duck that had its neck choked, and he was flabbergasted. On the arena, Niu Ben's robust figure that was like an iron tower rolled to the side of the arena in a sorry state at this moment, and he emitted a painful gasp. Moreover, a palm print was imprinted on his chest. His clothes were torn apart, his skin was red and swollen, and the scar of the 5 fingers was clearly visible, and it was like a red-hot iron had fiercely imprinted there. Everyone was dumbfounded. Before, they were still laughing with a strange look on their faces, thinking that Niu Ben would be ravaged. Who would have thought that it was Niu Ben who was sent flying at this moment? Moreover, he was sent flying by a light slap from that young man. This seemed to be too shocking. Just now, Niu Ben was so mighty and ferocious, and his imposing aura was overwhelming and oppressive. But now he was rolling on the ground in a sorry state and crying out in pain, causing everyone to almost not dare to believe their eyes. Alas, I originally wanted to discourage Brother Lin's arrogance, but now it seems that he will become more arrogant. What should I do? Xia Xiaochong sighed softly and frowned. You can only blame that raging bull. It was so arrogant before, but now it seems like it's too weak. The waiter almost vomited blood when he heard that. It turned out that the pity that this lass had shown just now was because she knew that Niu Ben couldn't make it. Awesome. I've finally found a tough opponent. Now that's more exciting. It feels great. In the arena, Niu Ben turned over and sat up. He didn't seem depressed or angry, but instead had a happy and excited look, and he laughed loudly without end. Very hard. How could this stupid bull describe himself in such a way? The corner of Lin Sun's mouth twitched unconsciously again, and his deep black eyes were filled with dangerous cold luster. Boom! Niobin rushed over again like a moving hill. His momentum became more and more fierce, and his whole body was overflowing with dark light, steaming with terrible air waves. The void was exploding, and the arena was in turmoil. If it weren't for the defensive formation, this area would have been seriously damaged. Even so, it still made some practitioners in the distance tremble with fear. Niobin of the Bull Clan was so strong that he was born with divine power. Bang! However, everyone only felt a blur in front of them. With a deafening collision sound, the aggressive Niobin was once again thrown out by Lin Sun's slap. His chest was almost collapsed, and his whole body was like a toad. He flopped on the ground with blood spurting from his mouth and nose, and the whole arena was shaken. Just looking at it was enough to make one panic in pain. Everyone was astounded in their hearts, and they finally realized that the youth that was fighting Niobin was actually an expert that concealed his strength. Niobin was so powerful, and he used the ancient secret method of the Bull Clan. If there were other strong practitioners in Tao Insight Realm, they would have been defeated. But in front of the teenager, Niobin seemed too weak. Twice in a row, he was blasted flying by a light slap. No matter how formidable Niobin was, he was defeated by the young man with a single strike, and this seemed to be too shocking. For a moment, everyone's eyes on Lin Sun changed with a touch of surprise. Is it strong enough? Lin Sun stood there with a straight posture. He hadn't moved a step since he stepped on the arena. Niobin wiped the blood stains from the corner of his mouth and grinned. Not enough. Again. Boom. He attacked again with a treasure, which was a huge bronze fork. It was shining like his eyes. When he swept across the air, it splashed thousands of rays of divine light, which rumbled and crushed the void like a waterfall. Lin Sun was a little surprised. Other strong practitioners in Tao Insight Realm were doomed to be seriously injured after suffering these two blows, but Niobin was still alive and vigorous, looking very fierce and extraordinary. Lin Sun took a deep breath and used part of his real strength. If he couldn't completely beat the bull this time, he would be laughed at by Xia Xiaochong. Bang! 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 In the following time, Niobin attacked again and again, but every time he was directly sent flying by Lin Sun in a head-on way, which stunned all the practitioners around. This kind of strong collision of power undoubtedly had too great an impact, which made them unable to calm down. Niobin was panting, his clothes were broken, and his bones were injured in many places. He was extremely miserable, but his eyes were brighter and brighter, and his fighting spirit was burning like a stove. He attacked crazily with violent and fierce momentum, like an enraged ancient bull, and a huge bronze fork splashed all over the field. Lin Sun's clothes were fluttering, clean and undamaged, and his manner was calm, with a kind of ethereal spirit. There was a strong contrast between the two people on the arena. Are you convinced? In the arena, Niobin was once again beaten to the ground. His entire body was twitching, and no one could bear to watch. His current appearance was too miserable. But even so, he still grinned. It's not easy for me to meet such an opponent like you. How can I give up so easily? Again. This made Lin Sun admire him a little. This guy's fighting capacity might not be the top in Tao Insight Realm, but his ability to be beaten was excellent. But in the end, Niobin was defeated and couldn't get up again. There was not an inch of his body intact, and he was seriously injured. Let's not fight today. I'll come back when I'm well. Niobin panted, but his eyes were still full of fighting spirit. It was certain that if he had not lost his fighting power, he would definitely continue to fight. Are you convinced? Lin Sun asked. Niobin struggled to get up from the ground, grinned, and shook his head no. As he spoke, he limped off the ring. This scene made the surrounding practitioners feel a sense of admiration. In any case, Niobin's fighting spirit of fighting with all his strength and never giving up was really rare and moving. By the way, suddenly, Niobin, who had walked down the arena, looked back at Lin Sun with burning eyes. Although I'm not convinced, I have to say that you are really tough. Lin Sun's face darkened, and he almost couldn't help rushing up and tearing the bull's mouth. Would it kill him to talk nicely? On one side of the arena, the manservant was completely dumbfounded, and his face was gloomy. The battle was over, but the result was completely beyond his expectation. Niu Ben was the fiercest of the Bull clan, but he was defeated? Damn, I made a mistake this time. As soon as the manservant thought of his perfunctory attitude towards Lin Sun before, he regretted it so much that he wanted to slap himself. Lin Sun was not a poor and unattractive boy at all, but a great master. He was not inferior to the descendants of the 4 sects and 3 clans at all. Near the arena, some practitioners were also whispering. After this battle, they suddenly found that this strange boy turned out to be a powerful figure, which made them all curious and shocked. Young master, I had eyes but failed to see just now and neglected you. I hope that a great person like you will forgive me. The manservant rushed to the arena with a smile more brilliant than a blooming chrysanthemum, with a strong sense of flattery. He was trying to make up for his mistake and hoped to get Lin Sun's forgiveness. Bah, this guy is too spineless. He didn't say that just now. Xia Xiaochong was very contemptuous and spat. I'm fighting on the arena. Let's talk about other things later. Lin Sun squinted at the manservant with a very rude attitude. The manservant's smile was stiff and his heart was bleeding. He realized that the young master in front of him was obviously not going to forgive him easily. He took a deep breath, and his attitude became more and more humble. He decided to use all methods to make up for his mistake. Young master, according to the rules, if you continue to stay in the arena, there will be other practitioners to challenge you. Before that, you have a quarter of an hour to rest. Before he finished, he was interrupted by Lin Sun. No need to rest. Arrange an opponent. I'm in a hurry. In a hurry? The manservant was stunned for a moment. It was the first time for him to hear such a unique reason for a duel. However, he dare not question Lin Sun anymore. He nodded like a chicken pecking rice and hurriedly went to arrange the next opponent for Lin Sun. Of course, Lin Sun was not in a hurry. He just wanted to earn more spiritual marrow in the limited time. Defeating Niu Ben means that I have already got double the reward. That is 200 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow. Apart from the 10% drawn by the silver pheasant martial arts field, I still have 180 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow. If I hurry up and the opponents I meet are all similar to Niu Ben, I can fight about 10 times in a row in 2 hours. As long as everything goes well, I can get about 1,800 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow in the end. Lin Sun calculated silently. The conclusion made him very satisfied, and his eyes became bright. The silver pheasant martial arts field was really a good place. Not only could he practice martial arts, but he could also earn a generous reward. Chapter 791. In the following time, the manservant's attitude became extremely enthusiastic. Child, that guy is a young overmatch of the Yuntong clan. He practices Tai technique of strange light and has outstanding combat power. During this period, he has won 19 matches in a row in our silver pheasant martial arts field. Child, you have to be careful. Your opponent is an overmatch of the Cyan Lion clan, who has a dazzling record of 23 consecutive wins. Child, every time a new opponent came to the ring, the manservant would remind Lin Sun, and his attitude became more and more humble and enthusiastic. The reason for this was that the manservant was completely frightened. Since Lin Sun stepped on the ring, he had fought with 27 opponents and won 27 of them, without any defeat. What made the manservant tremble the most was that Lin Sun didn't have a rest at all. Every time he won, he was unstoppable and unstoppable. Among the overmatches with Lin Sun, there were many tough guys who had experienced hundreds of battles, but all of them were completely suppressed by Lin Sun, without exception. He is too fierce. Who on earth is this young master? Why have I never heard of his name? The attendant's mind went blank, and he was shocked to the point he was in a trance. No matter how he racked his brains, he couldn't figure out when such a young genius had appeared in the fire spirit state. Rui Zhan, a first-class overmatch of the young generation of the Dragon Elephant clan, was also defeated. This is the 28th victory of that young man. There were bursts of exclamations from the distant audience. Before, few practitioners paid attention to the battles in the same realm, but as Lin Sun defeated all the opponents one after another, he soon attracted more and more attention. Until now, the 19th ring had become one of the most eye-catching rings in the field, causing a great sensation. Who is this boy? Where does he come from? Is he the descendant of a great sect? Judging from his age, he is definitely no more than 20 years old, but he already has such a terrible power in the Tao Insight realm. He is definitely a young talent. Everyone was amazed by Lin Sun's performance and speculated about his background. Even the top management of the Silver Pheasant martial arts field was alarmed. They began to pay attention to Lin's battle and sent people to inquire about everything about Lin. The atmosphere in the arena was very fiery, making Lin Sun, who was on the 19th arena, a dark horse, enter the field of view of the crowd. Only Xia Xiaochong was depressed. The more Lin Sun won, the more depressed she became. Seawater can't be measured, and a summer insect can't talk about ice. Doesn't this prove that I'm that summer insect? What infuriated Xia Xiaochong the most was that her name was still Xia Xiaochong. She was only one word away from becoming the real Xia Xiaochong. Suddenly, the atmosphere became somewhat silent, and the sound of people inhaling cold air resounded. Many practitioners were shocked, speechless, because at this moment, on the 19th arena, Lin Sun had already won the 29th round. As for the young man who was defeated by him, he was an extremely famous genius of the younger generation in Yin capital. His name was Yang Ku. He had won 30 rounds in a row in the Silver Pheasant martial arts field and was regarded as a dazzling figure second only to the young human Cheng Lixue. Cheng Lixue was the signature figure of the Silver Pheasant martial arts field. So far, he had maintained the highest record of winning 39 rounds in a row without any defeat. It was rumored that Cheng Lixue had long been chosen by the Green Pine Sword School, one of the 4 sects and 3 clans, and was about to become its successor. For a young man who came from a remote town, it was like a carp leaping through the Dragon Gate. His identity had changed, and he had become completely different. But now, Yang Ku was defeated, and Lin Sun was only 9 rounds away from challenging the record set by the young Cheng Lixue. How could it not be shocking? The so-called winning streak referred to the number of consecutive victories in an arena without being defeated and not being allowed to quit halfway. Therefore, it was extremely difficult. Now, Lin Sun had won 30 rounds in a row and defeated such a dazzling figure as Yang Ku. It was conceivable how much shock it brought to the strong in the audience. The sudden silence in the atmosphere at the moment was a silent proof. Too fierce. Too fierce. The manservant clenched his fists, trembled with excitement, and his face turned red. But Xia Xiaochong became more and more depressed. She couldn't help saying in a clear voice, "Is there no one who can fight with Brother Lin in such a big martial arts field?" Her voice was not loud, but it was particularly loud in this silent atmosphere, which immediately made the expressions of the practitioners in the audience become strange. What did the girl mean? Was she helping the young man to provoke and declare war? When some strong practitioners who participated in the duels on the arena heard this, their faces darkened. They subconsciously thought that this was a kind of direct provocation and neglect to them. For a moment, these strong practitioners looked at Lin Sun with unkind eyes, full of the smell of gunpowder. On the arena, Lin Sun was happily calculating how many rewards he would get after winning 30 battles. But when he heard this, he suddenly became stiff and the corners of his mouth twitched. "Xia Xiaochong." Lin Sun turned around and said in exasperation, "This girl was really good at attracting hatred. She made him the target of public criticism with just one sentence. The reason why he participated in the duels was just to practice martial arts and earn more spiritual marrow by the way. He didn't come to make trouble, despise, and provoke the heroes in the world." "Ah, Brother Lin Sun, am I wrong?" Xia Xiaochong looked ignorant and innocent. Lin Sun supported his forehead with his hand and was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. It was impossible to explain to this stupid girl. He directly jumped down from the arena. took Xia Xiaocheng's arm, and walked out. At the same time, Lin Sun told the manservant, "That's all for today. Go and get my reward. Hurry up." "Child, I'm not that. My name is Dong Ba." The manservant hurried forward and explained patiently. "Don't talk nonsense, go." Lin Sun was very depressed. He originally wanted to win more spiritual marrow, but now it seemed that he could only leave first. Otherwise, he would become a public enemy. "Okay, please wait a moment, child." Dong Ba hurriedly agreed and ran off to do his work. "Friend, don't you want to continue fighting a few more rounds? The situation is very good. You are about to break Cheng Li Xue's record. If you leave now, it will be a pity." Seeing that Lin Sun was about to leave, some practitioners in the audience couldn't help but urge him to stay. "Child, you can get 10 times the reward for breaking the record, and you can get an extra 100 pieces of mid-level spiritual marrow. Child, are you sure you don't want it?" When he heard this, Lin Sun's vision darkened. 10 times the reward? 100 pieces of mid-level spiritual marrow? He actually missed it just like that? You just provoked him and you plan to leave? Are you still a man? Some of the contestants who thought that Lin Sun was looking down on were very angry and spoke sarcastically. "You talk big. I was wondering how powerful you are. It turns out that you only know how to talk big. Stay if you have the guts. I'll definitely give you an unforgettable lesson today." Lin Sun was even more depressed in his heart. He kept silent with a black face and gnashed his teeth secretly. These guys are really presumptuous. Do they really think I'm leaving because I'm afraid? It's really ridiculous. Although what Xia Xiaocheng said just now was a little too direct, in Lin Sun's opinion, in the arena of the same realm in the Silver Pheasant martial arts field, unless it was a powerhouse who had also set foot on the absolute path. Otherwise, no one could make Lin Sun feel threatened. This was the source of Lin Sun's confidence. Unfortunately, if he dared to say these words, it would probably cause more criticism and anger, and it would be impossible for those practitioners to believe him. This was the reality. Who would believe empty words? Unless he defeated them one by one. Perhaps it would be enough to prove all this. But in this way, it would be too conspicuous and make too much noise. This wasn't what Lin Sun wanted. In the end, Lin Sun still suppressed his depression and decided to leave to lie low. "Child, will you come tomorrow?" Before leaving, Dong Ba, the manservant, sent all the rewards to Lin Sun, which made Lin Sun feel much better. "It depends," Lin Sun said casually. It's boring to come tomorrow. There's no one in the Silver Pheasant martial arts field who can fight with Brother Lin Sun. It's too." Xia Xiaocheng pouted and was very dissatisfied. But before she finished her words, Lin Sun, whose face was about to turn black again, covered her mouth at once and then dragged her away in a hurry. "Child, our boss said that if you continue to fight on the stage tomorrow, the commission will be directly reduced by half." Dong Ba reminded loudly behind him. In the end, after returning, Lin Sun breathed a sigh of relief. Then he looked at Xia Xiaocheng, the culprit, with an unkind look and said, "Xiaocheng, do you really want someone to defeat me?" Xia Xiaocheng sat at the table, holding her pure little face in her hands, and said sullenly, "I just don't want to be a summer insect." "Summer insect?" Lin Sun was stunned. What the hell was this reason? "You said before that a summer insect can't talk about ice." Xia Xiaocheng said angrily, "My name is Xia Xiaocheng, but I'm not a summer insect." Lin Sun was stunned at first, and then he was overjoyed and burst into laughter. "Summer insect? Xia Xiaocheng? What a perfect match. Is it so funny?" Xia Xiaocheng was angry. She stared at Lin Sun with her big clear eyes and white teeth. She really wanted to bite Lin Sun. "Well, I just think that your name is really good," Lin Sun said, and couldn't help laughing again. This girl's state of mind was as pure as a piece of white paper. To some extent, she was indeed somewhat similar to the summer insect who couldn't talk about ice. Of course, in order to avoid getting himself into trouble, Lin Sun wisely stopped talking about this topic. "My friend, did you also see Yu Linkong, the current holy son from the Pure Land of Longevity today?" Suddenly, an unruly and free voice sounded. Outside the inn, the dignified and slender figure of Fong Linhan strode in and looked at Lin Sun. Chapter 792. Lin Sun was in a daze for a moment, and then he reacted immediately. Fong Linhan was probably referring to the successor of the Pure Land of Longevity, who is using the golden nine-headed serpent as his mount and the sacred treasure, the Longevity Hall, as his temporary residence. However, Lin Sun only saw some fairy-like men and women at that time. He didn't know which one of them was the current holy son of the Pure Land of Longevity. Yulin Kong? It was a very unique and impressive name. Is Yulin Kong very powerful? Asked Lin Sun. Fong Linhan sat casually on the other side of Lin Sun, and his thin blade-like lips showed a touch of emotion. He said, "This is one of the best talents in South Xian world. He is famous in this world. Naturally, he is not an ordinary character." His name shook the world. Lin Sun was surprised. It was amazing. For example, the West Hung boundary was said to have thousands of states, and a single state was like a small world. In comparison, the size of the Southern Profound World's territory was probably not inferior to that of the Northern Profound World. However, the chosen one of the Pure Land of Longevity, Yulin Kong, was famous throughout the Southern Xian world. One could imagine how dazzling and peerless he was. The Yu clan was an extremely famous clan in the ancient times. To be able to survive for so many years, one could imagine how terrifying the Yu clan is. On the other hand, Yulin Kong is from the Yu clan. Moreover, he's a direct line descendant, and his ancestor is a true saint. Fong Linhan sighed with emotion, which was rare for him. Originally, Yulin Kong possessed an innate and extraordinary talent since he was born. He was rather mysterious and shocking. After he joined the blessed land of longevity to cultivate, he even revealed his potential and foundation that could shock the ancients and dazzle the contemporaries. At this point in time, he isn't just the holy child of the pure lands of longevity. He's also a top genius amongst the geniuses of a younger generation in the Southern Profound World, and he's sufficient to rival the holy maiden of our profound sword house, Ji Xingyao. As he spoke up to hear, a wisp of brilliant divine light shot out from Fong Linhan's eyes. A figure like this can be called a true, peerless genius. He's like the rising sun that can illuminate a world by himself. Even if it's in the entire ancient desolation region, there's only a small handful of such peerless figures. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows in surprise. Fong Linhan could definitely be considered as a stunning figure in the younger generation, but he was full of praise for Yulin Kong from the pure land of longevity, and he was not stingy with his praise. From this, it could be seen how extraordinary Yulin Kong's status was. Fong Linhan changed the topic and said, "Of course, the ancient desolation is too vast. No one can be sure how many more outstanding geniuses there are. But what is certain is that, at least in the current world, there is definitely a place for Yulin Kong among the peerless geniuses that people know of. Just like Xiao Hao of the Star Nether Imperial Clan, whom he met on the Starfall Peak of Purple Ox Mountain a few days ago, he was definitely a peerless genius who lived in seclusion. However, in this world, apart from him, almost no one knew of its existence. This was the foundation of the ancient desolation territory. No one dared to say that there were many more heaven-defying geniuses in this world, but they were still quietly hibernating. But one thing was certain, that with the coming of the great world, there were bound to be more and more heaven-defying geniuses in the ancient desolation territory. How is Ji Xingyao, the current saintess of Wenxian Sword School, compare with Yulin Kong? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. It wasn't that he was too curious, and it was instead because he was very clearly aware that if he wanted to rise up amidst the battle between the worlds and step foot onto the path of legend, then he was bound to be unable to avoid encountering numerous opponents like Yulin Kong and Ji Xingyao. Fong Linhan pondered deeply for a moment before he said, "This woman is extremely mysterious. Up until now, no one knows to what extent her cultivation has reached. However, it isn't just me. Many cultivators in the Western Hung world have speculated that the strength of this woman's reserves and karmic luck are absolutely not inferior to Yulin Kong." Speaking of this, he couldn't help but reveal a smile. Do you know, most practitioners in the West Hung realm now think that Ji Xingyao is qualified to be the leader of the younger generation in the West Hung realm? This may be a kind of high praise, but it undoubtedly proves that Ji Xingyao is extremely not simple. Lin Sun nodded, but he sighed with emotion in his heart. The foundation of the ancient Desolation territory was simply too abnormal, with hidden dragons and crouching tigers. The more he knew about it, the more shocked he was. No wonder the current emperor of the Xiao Empire once said that the ancient Desolation territory was the stage of a young generation, and only the truly peerless figures could lead the trend of the world and stand alone. By the way, I'm afraid that Yu Lincoln's appearance in the West Hung realm this time is to visit Ji Xingyao of Wenxian Sword School. If so, it's very likely that Yu Lincoln will appear with Ji Xingyao in the Dao Discussion Lantern Festival half a year later. At that time, I'm afraid there will be a great show to watch. Fong Linhan suddenly said with a trace of yearning in his eyes. Lin Sun was stunned, and then he asked in surprise, "Are you going to participate in the Dao Discussion Lantern Festival?" Fong Linhan asked in reply, "Aren't you going?" Lin Sun thought for a while and shook his head. "If I can, I'd be very happy to see the glory of the Dao Discussion Lantern Festival, but I'm not sure if I'll have time to participate at that time." Fong Linhan smiled and stood up, saying, "There's still a long time before the Dao Discussion Lantern Festival begins. Just don't forget that I'm still waiting for you to fight with me." After that, he turned and walked to his room. Lin Sun felt helpless for a while. Why did this guy always want to fight with him? He was really a fighting maniac. Who is this guy? He's so handsome. He's not much worse than senior brother Yu Jiaming. Xia Xiaochong looked obsessed, and her big clear eyes were full of little stars. When Lin Sun and Fong Linhan were talking before, she had been staring at Fong Linhan with her eyes, seeming to be fascinated by him. Now, she even praised Fong Linhan in front of Lin Sun. In particular, she specifically said that Fong Linhan was not inferior to Yu Jiaming, which made Lin Sun want to beat the girl. What did she mean? She said that I'm not as good as Yu Jiaming before, and now she said that Fong Linhan and Yu Jiaming are not inferior to each other. Doesn't this mean that I'm not as good as Fong Linhan? Lin Sun looked unkind. He snorted coldly and walked out of the inn. "Brother Lin, where are you going?" Xia Xiaochong quickly caught up with him. "I'm going to relax." Lin Sun said angrily. "I'm going too." Xia Xiaochong cheered. "This girl is really stupid." Lin Sun sighed for a while. He was so depressed. At least she should take care of his feelings. But she didn't have any self-awareness at all and cheered like this. He really couldn't say anything. Of course, Lin Sun didn't go to relax. Today, he won 29 games in a row in the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts field and got a total of 5,220 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow. In exchange for mid-grade spiritual marrow, he could exchange for almost 52 pieces. For any cultivator, this was already an extremely generous reward. But for Lin Sun, it was far from enough. When he walked out a large business, the spiritual marrow he earned today had become only 5 pieces of mid-grade congealing jades, leaving only 2 pieces of mid-grade spiritual marrow and 20 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow. 5 pieces of mid-grade congealing jades would be eaten up by spirit-eating insects in less than a moment. This made Lin Sun sigh again. The ancients really didn't deceive him when he was not in charge of the household. A group of rice-sized, spirit-eating insects forced him to be so embarrassed. If he lost his wealth, how could he make a living in the ancient Desolation territory in the future? Make money. Lin Sun secretly gritted his teeth and rubbed his palms. He decided to go to the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts field tomorrow to make a fortune. Only when there was pressure could there be motivation. At least now, Lin Sun felt that his fighting spirit was particularly high. If those practitioners of Xiao Empire knew that Lin Sun, who was the crown of the whole capital in their hearts, was now reduced to the point of worrying about money and was forced to make money by fighting on the stage, what would they think? The next morning, Lin Sun set out before dawn. He had to seize all the time to make money. Time was spiritual marrow. Wasting time was wasting bright and attractive spiritual marrow. "Brother Lin, you seem to be very strange today. Xia Xiaochong was a little confused. He felt that Lin Sun was like a hungry wolf going to hunt for food with his green eyes. Really, Lin Sun was full of energy and fighting spirit, but he sighed and said, "I can't help it. I'm forced." Well, I'm forced. When he arrived in front of the silver pheasant martial arts field, Lin Sun's eyes were quickly attracted by the newly hung bright banners, on which a line of blood-boiling words was written. A mysterious teenager came out of nowhere and appeared on the stage as a dark horse. He won 29 duels in a row and shocked the audience. Who is the mysterious teenager? Can he break the record made by Cheng Lixue? Friends, if you want to know more, come to the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts Field. Don't miss it. Mysterious teenager? Ha ha, Big Brother Lin's son. The nickname they gave you is really lousy. Xia Xiaochong was amused. He couldn't help but smile brightly. The corner of Lin Sun's mouth was twitching. He never thought that he would be reduced to a gimmick and become a publicity means for the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts field to attract business. Did they get my consent to attract business? The boss of the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts field is too cunning. Lin Sun cursed in his heart. However, for the sake of making money, Lin Sun decided to bear with it and not care about it for the time being. He even had an idea. If this gimmick could attract some more powerful opponents, it would not be a bad thing. It could allow him to hone his martial arts power more. After all, weak opponents were like chicken ribs and boring. Child, you come so early? At the gate of the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts field, the manservant named Dongba trotted all the way to greet Lin Sun with a smile as brilliant as a sunflower in full bloom. Don't talk nonsense. Don't waste time. By the way, prepare enough spiritual marrow for me. Lin Sun didn't want to waste any more time. Time was all spiritual marrow. He gave a domineering order and stepped in. He was full of fighting spirit, and the blood in his body seemed to be burning. The manservant Dongba was dumbfounded and murmured, "Why does this young master seem to be another person today? What's wrong with him?" Chapter 793. Boom! It was still the 19th platform. As soon as the battle began, one of Lin Sun's opponents was sent flying out of the platform. He was twitching all over and almost couldn't stand up. Then he admitted defeat directly. In order to make full use of the time, Lin Sun no longer reserved his strength as yesterday and used his real martial power. Like this player, he was directly sent flying out by the Swanee seal. Next, Lin Sun said directly without any nonsense and didn't intend to rest and recover. At the same time, he silently said a number in his heart, 123,600. 1 represented 1 hour. 20 represented the number of opponents defeated, which could also be understood as the 20th win in a row. 3,600 represented the accumulated amount of low-grade spiritual marrow. That was to say, Lin Sun had won 20 matches in a row and won 3,600 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow in the 2 hours he was on the stage. In the spectators' stands, all the shoujo were dumbstruck, their expressions sluggish. At the beginning, they came with great curiosity to see what kind of dark horse Lin Sun, known as the mysterious teenager, was and whether he was as exaggerated as the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts field described. But as Lin Sun easily defeated his opponents one by one, they were completely shocked and burst into an uproar. One blow. From the beginning of the battle to the present, none of the strong who went to the platform to fight with the mysterious teenager was able to resist one blow from him. His strong and disdainful posture was like that of a god. Until now, the uproar and exclamations in the audience had quieted down because they had been shocked and numbed. Although such a battle was shocking, it became a little boring after many times. They were all defeated by one blow. Although it was shocking, it was not wonderful at all. However, in contrast, the person in charge of the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts field was very excited, as if he had found a peerless treasure. He sent many subordinates to spread the news to the outside world and carried out explosive propaganda. The mysterious teenager once again appeared in a strong way. Until now, no one has been able to defeat him. Who is stronger, the mysterious teenager or Cheng Lixue? Today, the answer will be revealed. Is there anyone who is not convinced? Then come to the silver pheasant martial arts field. The mysterious teenager only wants to be defeated. All kinds of propaganda, with a strong sense of incitement spread throughout Yin capital today, bombarding all the cultivators of the various races. For a time, it caused an enormous stir and response, and numerous cultivators were drawn over and surged towards the silver pheasant martial arena. Some people were curious if the strength of the mysterious youth that the silver pheasant martial Dao arena boasted to the point of being a god was really so exaggerated. There were also some people who were disgruntled and felt that the silver pheasant martial Dao arena was being too impudent. For the sake of publicity, they even used the words, "I only seek defeat." Was this a declaration of war against the experts of the entire Yin capital? No matter what, the objective of the silver pheasant martial hall had been achieved. The practitioners that had come to watch poured in like a tide, and every one of them had to pay an admission fee. This also meant that they were bound to make a fortune today. The person in charge of the silver pheasant martial arts field beamed with joy. He looked at Lin Sun as if he was looking at a treasure. He was already thinking about how to keep Lin Sun as a dark horse and set up a new signboard to attract more strong practitioners. But soon his mood turned bad. He frowned and murmured, "I'm in trouble." In the field, as Lin Sun won 39 rounds in a row, the practitioners in the audience were clamoring for Cheng Lixue to fight with Lin Sun. Damn it! Why hasn't Cheng Lixue appeared yet? Could it be that he is afraid? The opponent is too weak. What's the point of such a duel if it goes on like this? Can't your silver pheasant martial arts field choose some strong practitioners who can fight? Alas, although I also know that it's not that Lin Sun can't win, it's that the mysterious youth's fighting capacity is too fierce, but it's really boring to determine the winner with one move. Complaints, and dissatisfied curses began to ring out. They became more and more intense, and there was a faint sign of being out of control. The face of the person in charge of the silver pheasant martial arts field changed. Although the propaganda said that the winner would be decided between Lin Sun and Cheng Lixue today, how could he really do that? It should be known that before Lin Sun appeared, Cheng Lixue was a famous signboard of the silver pheasant martial arts field. It was precisely because of Cheng Lixue that they had a gimmick to publicize, thus attracting a steady stream of practitioners to come. Therefore, whether Cheng Lixue or Lin Sun was defeated for the silver pheasant martial arts field, it was no different from destroying a golden signboard. What to do? The person in charge of the silver pheasant martial arts field was dumbfounded. He only cared about publicity and making money, but he didn't expect that it would lead to such a bad consequence. In the field, the crowd was indignant, expressing their dissatisfaction and clamoring for Cheng Lixue to fight on the stage. Lin Sun was also very dissatisfied with this because he was working hard to earn spiritual marrow, but now he was affected and no one was willing to fight on the stage. They all clamored for Cheng Lixue to fight with him, which made Lin Sun feel that it was a waste of time and spiritual marrow. At the same time, Lin Sun was also a little curious. Cheng Lixue must be a young genius since he was so popular. If he could fight with such an opponent, Lin Sun would be happy to see it. To be honest, he didn't have time to hone his martial arts from the beginning of the battle until now. His opponents were defeated one by one, which made him feel a little bored. Although there are many geniuses in this world, compared to them, there are more people with ordinary aptitudes. Lin Sun was also very clear that compared to the numerous people in the ancient desolation realm, the dazzling and outstanding geniuses were, after all, only a small number, and they were scattered in different places of the world. In the end, it wasn't realistic to expect to encounter some particularly powerful characters in Yin Haven. This was not because there were no top masters in the younger generation of Yin capital, but because Lin Sun could be said to be unparalleled in the Tao insight realm, and he could completely kill a great practitioner in the reincarnation development realm. However, Lin Sun still chose to fight on the same stage, which meant that those who could fight with him on the stage were all strong practitioners in the Tao insight realm. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun naturally felt lonely at the top. It was difficult to meet a worthy opponent. He suddenly somewhat understood Fong Linhan's desire to fight with him. Of course, it was not that he looked down on the strong in the world, but it was just a kind of feeling under Lin Sun's depression. In a remote corner of the field, a young man in cyan clothes looked very calm, but there was a touch of desire in his eyes, firmly staring at Lin Sun on the 19th stage in the distance. "I want to fight." The young man in cyan clothes was thin, and his appearance was ordinary, but he had a kind of temperament that was as tough as a pine tree. "You can't. If you lose, it will damage your reputation, and it will also affect your state of mind to rise. After all, you have not completely excavated your potential, and you are in a kind of transformation and growth. On the other hand, that young man is full of spirit, and his sharpness is unstoppable. He has extremely strong combat power and is not comparable to ordinary geniuses. So at this time, it is not suitable for you to participate in this kind of confrontation." Next to him, an old man in a black robe gently advised. He was an elder of Green Pine Sword sect, and his name was Liao Zhan. He was known for his discerning eyes, and he saw the amazing potential in Cheng Lixue. So he made an exception and accepted him as the successor of Green Pine Sword sect. "But if I don't fight, my state of mind will be shackled and blocked. Even if I cultivate in the future, it will be difficult for me to achieve anything great." Cheng Lixue took a deep breath and said seriously and firmly, "The battle of the world is a kind of bravery, determination, and fearlessness. If I don't have this state of mind, how can I set foot on the peak of the Tao in the future? Master, forgive me for not being able to obey you." After that, he no longer hesitated and strode towards the 19th arena in the distance. With every step he took, his look became firmer. Liao Zhan was stunned at first, and then his expression was complicated. Finally, he showed a touch of relief. After all, a young eagle needs to be tempered by wind and rain to fly far. With this state of mind, his future rise is destined to be unstoppable. Dressed in cyan clothes, Cheng Lixue stepped onto the 19th arena, causing a sensation and cheers in the audience. All the practitioners were extremely excited. The previous duel on the 19th arena was too boring, simple, and crude. Although it was extremely shocking, there was no suspense or interest at all. But now it was different because Cheng Lixue came. Compared with Lin Sun, Cheng Lixue undoubtedly attracted more attention from the practitioners present. Almost everyone knew that this young man used to be just a nobody in a remote city. But after entering Yin capital, he shone with amazing potential, like a carp leaping over the Dragon Gate, reborn, and became a famous young genius far and wide. This was not something that the silver pheasant martial arts field could package. It was the real thing that made Cheng Lixue have today's reputation. "Ah, finally a master comes," Xia Xiaochong cheered. She also felt bored before and felt lonely for Lin Sun. The appearance of Cheng Lixue finally made her feel that there was something worth watching. "Little brother, work hard and try to defeat him," Xia Xiaochong shouted in a crisp voice. Lin Sun couldn't help twitching his lips again. Since he met Xia Xiaochong, he found that the twitching of his lips had become more frequent. But immediately, Lin Sun noticed Cheng Lixue, who had landed on the ground. This was a very ordinary young man, but he had a kind of indomitable temperament. He was as firm as a rock and as vigorous as a pine tree. Just his breath made Lin Sun realize that Cheng Lixue was definitely a person with an extremely strong state of mind and will. Even if such a person had not really risen in the world now, he would sooner or later amaze the world with a brilliant feat and soar to the sky without accident. "Cheng Lixue, please enlighten me." Cheng Lixue looked at Lin Sun calmly, with a kind of firm temperament. "Lin Sun." Lin Sun's words were concise and to the point. Although he knew that Cheng Lixue was not simple, it didn't bring Lin Sun any real threat or pressure. But compared with the previous battle, his attitude became much more serious. Chapter 794. The battle broke out in the arena. Clang! Cheng Lixue was slim, holding a 3-foot-long sword in his hand. He stepped forward, and in an instant, there was a sharp and terrifying aura around him. Everyone in the arena was excited. They held their breath and stared at the battle closely, lest they miss any details. In the eyes of all the practitioners, this was definitely a peak battle between the younger generation. After all, Cheng Lishua's strength had long been deeply rooted in their hearts. Lin Sun, who rose like a dark horse, was also not an ordinary character. The battle between two strong young men at this moment naturally attracted the attention of the audience. Whoosh! The void was torn apart by a touch of green light. It was like green lightning, fierce and terrifying. This was Cheng Lishua's sword. At this moment, his whole body was like an unsheathed sword. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed. Without hesitation, his figure floated like an illusory luster, and his fist collided with Cheng Lishua's. Lin Sun was delighted by Cheng Lishua's strength. Boom! The fierce battle between the two caused the arena to be in turmoil. Cheng Lishua was very strong. His sword was like a divine rainbow, dazzling like a waterfall, crisscrossing and cutting through the void. The fierce qi changed the color of heaven and earth, vaguely showing the style of an ancient sword immortal. Lin Sun, on the other hand, was barehanded. His figure floated and wandered around the arena, pointing fingers at the sky and hitting the ground. His movements were leisurely and calm, without any trace of worldly qi. The audience was in an uproar. All the practitioners cheered, and the noise resounded throughout the arena. Compared to the dull and unsuspenseful battle from before, this peak battle at this moment was undoubtedly too brilliant and shocking. As expected of Cheng Lishua, who was chosen by the Pine Sword sect, just his sword Dao alone is outstanding among the younger generation. That mysterious young man is not bad either. It's rare to see him fight Cheng Lishua barehanded. Who will win and who will lose in this battle? Without a doubt, it must be Cheng Lishua. No, it could also be that mysterious young man. Stop arguing. Isn't it too early to say this? Let's wait and see. The audience was in an uproar. Boom! Cheng Lishua's aura grew even fiercer. His green clothes fluttered in the wind while his green blade flowed, and he emanated a dazzling sword qi that could split mountains and sever rivers. The elegance of the way of the sword caused many cultivators to exclaim in admiration and be dumbfounded. They were unable to imagine how such a young man could have such profound attainments in the way of the sword. In contrast, Lin Sun's momentum seemed very calm, or rather casual. Every move he made had a simple and natural charm. He didn't seem to be eye-catching, but he had never been suppressed by Cheng Lishua since the beginning. One is showing off his abilities, while the other is hiding his incompetence. It is truly impossible to tell who is stronger. Some of the older generation sighed emotionally. Thinking back to the past, when they were at this age, they definitely did not have this kind of strength. They couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, every generation had its own geniuses. Kill. The space between Cheng Lishua's brows carried a fierce intent. His figure was dazzling and suffused with brilliance, and the azure sword in his hand emanated a shocking sword qi that shook the heavens and the earth. Its murderous intent covered the heavens and the earth. However, no matter how fierce and swift his sword momentum was, it was always defused by Lin Sun and countered with ease. Bang! Lin Sun's fist swept through the air like a white cloud, untainted by the world of mortals. It looked very casual, but it made Cheng Lishua's body tremble. So strong, his expression became more and more serious, and his eyes were full of blazing light that was as sharp as a sword. The battle with Lin Sun made Cheng Lishua feel extremely satisfied. This was the feeling of meeting his match, and it made him feel a different kind of fighting spirit than before. His blood was boiling. This kind of battle is satisfying. Cheng Lishua's momentum became more and more fierce. His sword was singing, his qi and blood were boiling, and his black hair was dancing in the wind. His whole body glowed with a terrifying fighting spirit. Good. In the distance, Elder Liao Zhan of Pine Sword Sect couldn't help but feel happy. He could see that to Cheng Lishua, Lin Sun might be an extremely strong opponent. But at the same time, fighting with such an opponent had imperceptibly stimulated Cheng Lishua's potential and tempered him in battle. Like a piece of unpolished jade, After being polished and polished, its brilliance and foundation would gradually reveal itself, and finally release a dazzling brilliance that would attract the attention of the world. Obviously, Liao Zhan thought that Lin Sun was like an excellent whetstone, tempering and sharpening Cheng Lishue's edge. Cheng Lishue's momentum is getting stronger and stronger. Even the practitioners in the spectator seats found that as the battle went on, Cheng Lishue's momentum was rising steadily, which was shocking and shocking. This undoubtedly meant that Cheng Lishue had extremely terrifying potential in his body, and his talent was outstanding, and he was achieving self-improvement through the battle. On the other hand, Lin Sun was still leisurely like a floating cloud, calm and composed. From the beginning to the end, he didn't show any particularly eye-catching excellence. Looking at this situation, I'm afraid that young man is going to lose. Many practitioners made such a judgment. Ah, is Brother Lin really going to lose? Xia Xiaochong opened her clear eyes wide and stared at the arena. Originally, she was very happy to see Lin Sun suffer some setbacks and strike a blow to his arrogance. However, when this moment really came, she couldn't bear it. She was very tangled in her heart and muttered to herself, "It's not good to win. It's not good to lose. I'm too kind." If Lin Sun hurt her heart, his lips would probably twitch again. However, Lin Sun really didn't have the energy to pay attention to Xia Xiaochong at the moment. At this moment, his mind was completely immersed in honing martial arts, and the qi in his body showed a different state than before. His blood and qi were boiling. His spirit and qi were raging. There was a strange power vibrating all over his body, surging in all his limbs and bones like a wild horse out of control. This made his skin faintly tremble, as if he was trying to suppress something. His breathing showed a strange rhythm, like a dragon swallowing water, like a bull chewing its cud, with a unique and strong rhythm. This was the secret inheritance of the seventh change of 9 changes of Tribulation Dragon, Yazi, Fury. This kind of secret method was not a fighting method, but a secret method to stimulate one's potential. Practicing this method would make practitioners fall into a state of fury so that they could release twice the power of their own strength in the battle. Yazi, one of the ancient fierce beasts, was irritable, fierce, domineering, bloodthirsty, and belligerent. It was shaped like a lion, but had a dragon's head, holding a sword in its mouth, and its forehooves were like pillars supporting the sky, which could crush mountains, rivers, the sun, and the moon. In ancient times, there was a saying that Yazi must seek revenge for the smallest grievance, which meant that once you provoked Yazi, you would definitely suffer from its violent revenge. Note, this is not the original meaning of the idiom. Yazi must seek revenge for the smallest grievance. It could be imagined how bad the temper of this fierce beast was. This secret method was named Yazi Fury. In the final analysis, it was a kind of secret method that allowed practitioners to stimulate themselves, squeeze out their potential, and then make their fighting power soar. Rumble in the battle. The blood in Lin Sun's body was boiling, and his potential was stimulated, showing a terrible roar. However, he had been suppressing this secret method and did not use it. Instead, he concentrated on feeling the rhythm of this secret method to understand its mystery. From the outside, it was impossible to see anything. But what everyone didn't know was that Cheng Lishue was constantly sharpening himself in the battle, and his momentum was getting stronger and stronger. In fact, Lin Sun was also using Cheng Lishue's attack to let himself comprehend and deduce the mystery of Yazi Fury in the battle. The ancients once said that when an ordinary man is angry, blood will flow 5 steps. When an emperor is angry, blood will flow like a river. And when Yazi is angry, mountains will collapse and the earth will crack, and all things will be destroyed. This secret method is really terrible. If I practice it to the extreme, it can make me exert twice the combat power. If I use it to fight against the enemy, I don't need to use the broken sword at all, and it is enough to kill the top figures of reincarnation developing realm. However, this secret method has its drawbacks. It will damage one's chi and blood, and it consumes too much energy. It can only be used to break out of an encirclement and counterattack in a desperate situation, and can't be used for a long time in battle. All kinds of insights surged into Lin Sun's mind like a tide, making his understanding of Yazi fury more profound. However, it didn't take long for this state of martial arts comprehension to be interrupted, and Lin Sun immediately woke up. Opposite him, Chung Lishua put away the Qing Feng sword and stood there, no longer fighting. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. Even the practitioners who were watching the battle were stunned and confused. They were enjoying the battle and were extremely excited. Who would have thought that the battle would suddenly stop at this moment? What was going on? All eyes turned to Chung Lishua at the same time. There's no need to fight anymore. I admit defeat. Chung Lishua's expression was calm, and the sharp momentum all over his body was withdrawn like a tide. He returned to his calm and vigorous temperament like a pine tree. As soon as his words came out, everyone was stunned and almost couldn't believe it. In the previous battle, Chung Lishua obviously had the upper hand, and his momentum was rising steadily. Why did he suddenly admit defeat at this moment? It was inexplicable and unbelievable. I'm not as good as you now, but when the Great World War comes, it's not necessarily the case. Chung Lishua looked at Lin Sun seriously and didn't show any emotion. He seemed very calm, and there was no trace of negative emotion after admitting defeat. After saying that, he turned around and floated away, ignoring the stunned gazes of the audience. It was as if victory or defeat meant nothing to him, because he had comprehended it. In the battle, just now, he had a new breakthrough in his understanding of swordsmanship. It was meaningless to continue fighting. However, what made Chung Lishua feel complicated was that through the battle just now, he clearly realized that compared with Lin Sun, he was still some distance away, because no matter how strong he became and how his momentum rose, from beginning to end, he couldn't shake Lin Sun at all. Others might not know how terrifying Lin Sun was, but as his opponent, Chung Lishua deeply experienced it. Lin Sun was a formidable enemy. Even when the Great World War came, it was bound to be very difficult to defeat him. But Chung Lishua was not afraid. He had his own foundation and confidence. When the Great World War comes, the real winner will be decided between us, Chung Lishua murmured in his heart. He floated away alone under countless puzzled, shocked, and puzzled gazes. From beginning to end, his face was as calm as a lake. P.S. Correction of a mistake. The name of the saintess of Wenshuan Sword House was Ji Xingyao. The first time, it was written as Wu Lingsong. There was also a numerical error. Lin Sun won 29 consecutive victories on the first day in the Silver Pheasant martial arts field. Chapter 795. After Chung Lishua admitted defeat, he left on his own, which puzzled all the practitioners present, and then many people were dissatisfied. The fierce battle was interrupted abruptly, which made people unhappy. What was worse was that Chung Lishua, whom they had high hopes for, directly admitted defeat and left. This was unacceptable. Damn it, I was blind to think highly of Chung Lishua. Who would have thought that he didn't even have the courage to fight to the end? Alas, it's really disappointing. I didn't expect him to be such a person. Grumbles and complaints rose and fell one after another. But some experienced people were keenly aware that even if the battle continued, Chung Lishua had no hope of winning. Because from the beginning to the end, although Lin Sun had been hiding his strength, he never showed any sign of defeat. On the other hand, Chung Lishua couldn't do anything to Lin Sun even though his momentum kept rising, which made Lin Sun's strength even more terrifying. Based on this speculation, it should be a wise choice for Chung Lishua to admit defeat and leave decisively. At least it didn't cause much damage to his reputation. If he was defeated by Lin Sun, needless to say, Chung Lishua's reputation was doomed to plummet, and he would become a loser in the eyes of the public. The consequences would be serious. What a pity. On the arena, Lin Sun was a little helpless. It was not easy for him to meet a worthy opponent, but Chung Lishua took the initiative to admit defeat and leave, which inevitably made Lin Sun depressed. In the previous battle, he had been suppressing his strength, fearing that he would show too much strength and scare Cheng Lixue away. But it was obvious that even if he suppressed his strength, Cheng Lixue was aware of the gap between him and himself, so he decisively withdrew. Fortunately, I have roughly understood the mystery of Yazi's wrath. What's left is to hone my skills in a real bloody battle. Lin Sun thought as he walked down the arena. Humph! Xia Xiaochong snorted from her nose, which made Lin Sun feel strange. Is there something wrong with your nose? Do you want to ask a medical practitioner to help you? Humph! Xia Xiaochong stared at Lin Sun with her big clear eyes and said angrily, Brother Lin, you are so stupid. Can't you see that I am angry? Cheng Lixue is really disappointing. I was waiting for him to defeat you, but before she could finish speaking, her bright and white forehead was knocked by Lin Sun. Follow me. Lin Sun strode off into the distance. After defeating Cheng Lixue, he didn't want to stay any longer. He planned to leave as soon as he received his reward. His heart was burning with passion. He had won 40 battles in a row and defeated Cheng Lixue. He would also receive 10 times the reward and an additional 100 pieces of mid-grade spiritual essence. This was an extremely generous reward. Young master, aren't you going to continue playing? The manservant Dong Ba asked hesitantly. This was a palace in the Silver Pheasant martial arts field. It was the place to receive rewards. But when Lin Sun wanted to receive the rewards, he encountered some twists and turns. No, there's no point in continuing to fight. Lin Sun was telling the truth. Although he really needed the spiritual marrow, it would be too boring if he didn't have a worthy opponent, and it wouldn't be helpful for him to hone his martial arts. Young master, this is a bit difficult. Dong Bai looked troubled. What's wrong? Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and realized that something was wrong. Don't tell me you want to renege on your debt. Dong Bai looked embarrassed and became more and more embarrassed. Young master, you're now the most dazzling powerhouse in our Silver Pheasant martial arts field. Wouldn't it be a pity if you just leave like this? Cut the crap. Lin Sun's black eyes turned cold. Tell me, if I leave today, are you going to renege on your debt? Dong Bai trembled all over and his face turned pale. A wisp of terrifying pressure spread out from Lin Sun. Although it was only a wisp, it made his hair stand on end and his soul almost leave his body. Young master, please calm down. I'll explain for you. Dong Bai, you leave first. There's nothing for you to do here. At this time, a middle-aged man in an embroidered robe walked over leisurely with his hands behind his back. He looked very stout with a warm smile on his face. Through the introduction, Lin Sun knew that this middle-aged man in an embroidered robe was the person in charge of the Silver Pheasant martial arts field. He was also from the Silver Pheasant clan, and his name was Dong Hai. Young master, your performance in the Silver Pheasant martial arts field today really amazed us. You're definitely a well-deserved young talent. Dong Hai's face was full of admiration, and he wanted to chat with Lin Sun. But the more he acted like this, the more Lin Sun frowned. Lin Sun said expressionlessly, no need for pleasantries. I just want to ask you, if I leave after receiving the reward, are you going to renege on your debt? Renege on your debt, Dong Hai said in surprise. Don't get me wrong, young master. Our Silver Pheasant martial arts field never reneges on our debt. What's more, if such a thing happens, how can our Silver Pheasant martial arts field keep a foothold in Yin capital in the future? Lin Sun's black eyes were cold. He looked at Dong Hai quietly and said, give me a straightforward answer. He knew that Dong Hai was a troublemaker. He deliberately avoided the important points and dwelled on the trivial, refusing to tell the truth. Being stared at by Lin Sun, the smile on Dong Hai's face suddenly disappeared. He knew that if he continued to fool Lin Sun, he would only irritate the young man in front of him. Young master, you can receive the reward if you want. But before that, can you promise us one thing? Dong Hai took a deep breath and looked solemn. Lin Sun smiled, but his smile was very cold. The reward I won on the stage belongs to me. Why should I promise you one thing? Seeing Lin Sun's tough attitude, Dong Hai was also angry. He put on a fake smile and said, young man, you may be very strong, but things in the world are not as simple as you said. If you listen to my advice, you will cooperate with us. What if I don't cooperate? Lin Sun's black eyes were surging with cold light. Haha, you should know the consequences. Dong Hai seemed to have nothing to fear. With a touch of playfulness in his eyes, I just want to tell you that you may be very dazzling today and make countless practitioners marvel and shock. But if you completely disappear from the world tonight and can't see the sun tomorrow, who in the world will really care about your life or death? His words were casual, but the threat was obvious. He paused, with a cold smile on his lips. He stared at Lin Sun and said, "We have inquired about your background. You are an outsider, like Chung Li Xue. Do you know that in Yin capital, there are many outsiders like you who mysteriously disappear for no reason every day?" As he said, Dong Hai smiled and raised his hand to pat Lin Sun's shoulder as if he was sure that Lin Sun would win. However, the next moment, Dong Hai's movement became stiff as if he was frozen. His face suddenly changed, and he opened his mouth to scream. But he couldn't scream anymore because his neck had been firmly grasped by a hand. Lin Sun had been silent before, but now he smiled, showing his dazzling white teeth. Looking at Dong Hai, whose face was flushed with anger and panic, Lin Sun said, "If you want to renege, just say it. Why do you still threaten me?" Dong Hai felt cold all over. He felt that he was imprisoned by an invisible force and couldn't move at all, which made him extremely frightened. After all, he was a strong practitioner in reincarnation developing realm. But now, he was subdued by a young man in Tao Insight realm before he could even react. "If I don't cooperate with you, you will kill me to silence me. Is this the style of your silver pheasant martial arts field?" Lin Sun asked with a smile. In fact, his heart was already full of killing intent. He just wanted to earn some spiritual marrow, but Dong Hai reneged on his debt and even threatened him to agree to one thing. This was too unscrupulous. What Lin Sun couldn't tolerate most was that Dong Hai had obviously planned this for a long time. Otherwise, why would he inquire about his background and details? It was just that Lin Sun was an outsider with no backing, no power, and no influence. He was easy to bully. Dong Hai's eyes bulged and blue veins stood out on his forehead. He was about to suffocate, but no matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't even breathe, let alone move. "You'd better not scream, or I can't guarantee that I won't kill you," Lin Sun said and waved his hand. Bang! Dong Hai's body was thrown to the ground. Like a drowning man who was rescued, he gasped for breath as if he had walked through the gate of hell. "Give me the reward." Lin Sun lowered his eyes and looked down at him. "Okay." Dong Hai seemed to have changed into a different person. He agreed readily and took out a storage bag from his body and handed it to Lin Sun. He was really scared. Just now, he even suspected that he was going to die. Lin Sun took the storage bag in his hand and checked it. After finding that the number of spiritual marrow was correct, he put it away. Then, Lin Sun looked at Dong Hai and said, "You can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. Since you dare to threaten me, you should pay the price." Dong Hai's face suddenly changed, and he cried out involuntarily, "What are you going to do? Do you know that you are playing with fire? I am the Silver Pheasant Clan." Ah! Before he finished his words, he let out a scream. His body was kicked away, his bones and tendons all over his body were broken, and his cultivation was directly abolished. "You! How dare you abolish my Tao?" Dong Hai looked resentful. He was trembling all over as if he had gone mad. Lin Sun said with a smile, "Whether I kill you or not, your silver pheasant martial arts field will definitely come to retaliate after I leave. Now, I abolish you to remind others in your silver pheasant martial arts field in advance that if you want to fight against me, you should first consider whether you can bear the consequences." After that, he kicked Dong Hai unconscious and strode out of the hall. He called Xia Xiaochong, who was waiting outside the hall, and walked towards the silver pheasant martial arts field. From beginning to end, Lin Sun looked calm as if nothing had happened. On the other hand, the guards and attendants of the silver pheasant martial arena utterly didn't notice that within that hall, their supervisor's cultivation had been crippled long ago, and he'd fainted. It was not until a quarter of an hour later that the scream of Dong Ba, a manservant, sounded in the hall. "Bad news. Bad news. Someone come quickly." Then, the comatose Dong Hai was finally found, which caused a disturbance and turmoil in the silver pheasant martial arts field. Chapter 796. In the inn. In the room, with a crash, a pile of magnificent and illusory spiritual marrow was poured out, filling the room with a dazzling light. It was extremely tempting. This was the reward Lin Sun got in the silver pheasant martial arts field today. Among them, winning the first 39 matches in a row earned him 7,020 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow. Defeating Chung Lishue in the 40th match earned him 10 times the reward and an extra 100 pieces of mid-grade spiritual marrow. In total, he got 179 pieces of mid-grade spiritual marrow and 20 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow. This was an extremely rich wealth. However, when Lin Sun converted these spiritual marrow into mid-grade concentration jades, he was not happy. At most, he could buy 17 pieces of mid-grade concentration jades. Lin Sun suspected that with the appetite of the 9 spirit-eating bugs, this amount of concentration jades could only last for a few days. Crack, crack. Xia Xiaochong sat in front of the table, munching on sunflower seeds with great relish. This kind of sunflower seeds was white and plump like jade seeds. It was the fruit of the spiritual sunflower planted by spiritual botanists. After stir-frying with some spices, it was crisp and delicious. The kernel contained a strong fragrance and wisps of spiritual energy. It was a kind of snack popular among practitioners in the ancient desolation realm. Brother Lin Sun, will you go there tomorrow? Xia Xiaochong ate sunflower seeds with her small mouth and blinked her big clear eyes, looking very carefree. Soon, the table was piled with sunflower seed shells. Lin Sun said casually, I'll go to another place tomorrow. I can't go to the silver pheasant martial arts field anymore. Yin capital was prosperous and beautiful. In the city alone, there were hundreds of martial arts fields distributed in different areas. Among them, the largest was undoubtedly the Yin capital martial arts field. It was jointly established by the 4 sects and 3 families. It was absolutely worthy of being the first martial arts field in the fire spirit state. Its scale and influence were far beyond that of other martial arts fields. For example, Feng Linhan, the future leader of the Baji Saber Nunnery, had been in the Yin capital martial arts field for the past month, challenging talents from all over the fire spirit state. He had a dazzling record and had never been defeated so far. It could be said that he was the most popular figure in Yin capital. In contrast, the sensation caused by Lin Sun in the silver pheasant martial arts field was far less than that of Feng Linhan. It wasn't that Lin Sun was inferior to Feng Linhan, but it was because the influence of the Flame City Dojo was too great. The battles that took place there would imperceptibly attract the attention of the entire fire spirit state. On the other hand, the Silver Pheasant Dojo was obviously much inferior. Even though it was famous, it was merely limited to Yin capital. In Yin capital, there were at least dozens of martial dojos on the scale of the Silver Pheasant Martial Dojo. Because of the reward, Lin Sun had become enemies with the Silver Pheasant martial arts field. Naturally, it was impossible for him to go to the Silver Pheasant martial arts field to fight again. Therefore, if Lin Sun wanted to continue to practice martial arts and earn spiritual marrow, he had to choose other martial arts fields. Xia Xiaochong was very carefree and didn't care about the reason at all. He cheered, "That's great. There's no one in the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts Hall who can fight. I haven't wanted to go there for a long time." Obviously, she was still thinking that someone could defeat Lin Sun and strike a blow to his arrogance. Lin Sun just smiled, looking very calm. After being beaten so many times by Xia Xiaochong, he had developed a certain resistance. In the evening, Feng Linhan's tall and dignified figure once again returned to the inn in the sunset, and then he knocked on Lin Sun's door. "Have you heard that a mysterious teenager appeared in the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts field? He won 40 battles in a row and made Chung Lishue admit defeat in the middle of the battle." Feng Linhan leaned against the door with his arms crossed. There was a sense of laziness. He didn't go in and chatted with Lin Sun like a neighbor visiting. "Yes." Lin Sun nodded. As for Xia Xiaochong, when she found that Feng Linhan appeared, she even forgot to eat melon seeds. She held her small face in her hands and stared at him with her clear eyes, looking like an infatuated fool. Moreover, her expression was not pretentious at all. She looked at him unscrupulously, extremely direct, and didn't hide anything at all. Lin Sun was too lazy to pay attention to this little infatuated fool. He was wondering why Fong Linhan suddenly came to mention this matter to him. It's hard for me to meet a satisfactory opponent recently. I plan to go to the Silver Pheasant martial arts field tomorrow to see if the mysterious teenager is as powerful as the rumor says. Fong Linhan said, "Do you want to go with me?" "Go," Xia Xiaochong suddenly cried out, startling Lin Sun. Immediately, his face darkened. Did this little infatuated fool forget what he said just now? They were going to change places tomorrow. However, Xia Xiaochong had long ignored Lin Sun's existence. Her pure little face was full of infatuation. In her eyes, Fong Linhan's tall figure leaned against the door, looking so outstanding, free, and lazy. On the other hand, his face that carried a wild and evil aura was covered in a layer of illusory light by the setting sun that was cut out from the window, and it was hazy and beautiful to the point it caused one's heart to shatter. And Lin Sun saw with his own eyes that on the corner of Xia Xiaochong's pink lips, a wisp of crystal-clear saliva, as fine as spider silk, dripped down. This is? Fong Linhan was also startled. An infatuated fool acting up. It's getting late. Let's talk again when we have time. Lin Sun answered angrily and slammed the door, shutting Fong Linhan outside. Then he stared at Xia Xiaochong with a dark face, gritted his teeth, and said, "Do you dare to not be more reserved? How can there be a little girl who stares at a man like you and drools at the same time? You're simply shameless. Do you still have any sense of shame?" "I just want to see if there are any other ideas. Is that wrong?" Xia Xiaochong raised her hand to wipe off her saliva with a look of disapproval. Lin Sun was speechless. This girl was simply speechless. "Friend, are you going tomorrow?" Fong Linhan's voice sounded outside the door. "No, I'm not free." Lin Sun refused without hesitation. "Oh, in fact, if you are willing to fight with me, it doesn't matter whether you go to the Silver Pheasant martial arts field or not," Fong Linhan said outside the door. "I'm really not free." Lin Sun had a headache. Xia Xiaochong was a weirdo. After all, she was a heartless, infatuated fool. But why was Fong Linhan so stubborn? Just for a fight. He had to keep pestering him? But he heard Fong Linhan's hearty laughter outside the door. "Well, I'll wait for you to come again when you have time." Lin Sun was speechless for a while. Was there an end to it? Xia Xiaochong, with a dazzled look, murmured, "Just listening to his laughter, I can imagine how charming his smile is." Lin Sun's lips finally couldn't help twitching again. At night, Yin Capital became more and more lively. The lights were like dragons, and the prosperity was like a dream. There were endless streams of carriages and laughter everywhere. Xia Xiaochong fell asleep. Her posture was very unsightly. She was clasped on the bed like an octopus. Her pure and beautiful little face became very quiet, which was rare. When Lin Sun woke up from meditation, he saw this scene. He thought in his heart, how nice it would be if this girl was so quiet every day. He got up and helped Xia Xiaochong tuck the quilt. Then he sat quietly at the table alone, looking down like an old monk in meditation. Outside the window, the night was like water, and the bustling street was noisy. Inside the room, it was quiet and dim. Only a copper lamp swayed with dim yellow light, illuminating Lin Sun's meditating figure. Time passed unconsciously. It was already early in the morning. The hustle and bustle outside the window had become quiet and desolate. The lights on the street faded, leaving only a crescent moon hanging in the sky, sprinkling snow-white light. But very quickly, dark clouds surged over, covering even the crescent moon. Yin Capital was completely enveloped in darkness. At this time, Lin Sun, who seemed to be in meditation, opened his eyes. A ray of cold light suddenly emerged from the depths of his pupils, like a cold lightning tearing through the darkness. Whoosh! The next moment, Lin Sun disappeared from the room. Outside the inn, the night was like a curtain covering the sky. It was empty and gloomy. There were thick dark clouds, and it seemed that it was going to rain. Not far away, Under the eaves of a low house stood two black shadows. Their chi was restrained. If one didn't look carefully, it was impossible to notice their existence. They were communicating with their spiritual awareness. When will we act? Wait a little longer. It's just to kill a young man in Tao Insight Realm. Why are you so cautious? Even if he is a practitioner in reincarnation developing realm, he can't stop our assassination. There's not only the young man in this inn, but also Fong Lin Han of Baji, Saber Nunnery. If we alarm him, I'm afraid it will cause unnecessary misunderstanding. Fong Lin Han? Humph, a young man from Xianshui province has been stirring up trouble in Yin capital recently, looking down on all the strong practitioners of a younger generation in Fire Spirit province. He is too rampant and arrogant. Why don't we take this opportunity to kill him as well? This time, we're going to kill that young man, not Fong Lin Han. Don't do anything unnecessary. Although Fong Lin Han is arrogant, he is too famous now. Once he dies mysteriously, it will definitely attract too much attention. As for that mysterious young man, he is just an outsider without any sect or support. Even if he dies, it won't cause any trouble. Both of them covered their bodies with cloaks and communicated with their spiritual awareness. Like ghosts from the netherworld, they looked very creepy in the dark night. However, they completely did not notice that there was a figure even stranger than them, as if without a sound, walking over from the opposite side of the street. Sorry to keep you waiting. When Lin Sun's voice suddenly sounded in the silence, the two men in black suddenly tensed up and almost jumped up in fright. Only then did they find that the target they were going to kill this time was standing less than 10 meters away from them, without them noticing. As if he had appeared out of thin air, the two men were so shocked that their scalps went numb and they couldn't believe their eyes. Well, when did you come? One of the men in black was terrified and horrified. The target had appeared, but they didn't notice it at all. This was too terrifying. Oh, I just came, Lin Sun said casually. His pair of black eyes that were as deep as the abyss lit up, and he looked at the two men in black with interest. By the way, do you have spiritual marrow with you? This was a very strange question, and it caused the two black-clothed men to be stupefied. Their entire bodies felt uncomfortable, and they felt as if they were prey that had been targeted. The situation was not good. Chapter 797. Young man, what do you mean? One of the black-clothed men asked, pretending to be calm. Why do you ask us if we have the spiritual marrow for no reason? Lin Sun said with a smile, don't pretend. Is it necessary to continue pretending at this moment? In the night, Lin Sun's smile was very bright, but it made the two black-clothed men feel more and more uneasy. This was very strange. They were all ruthless figures in the reincarnation developing realm. Their hands were stained with blood, and they could be regarded as masters in the dark world of Yin capital. But now, they felt uneasy because of a young man in the Tao Insight realm, which made them keenly realize that there was something wrong with their target this time. Let me guess. You are either from the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts field, or you're the killer's hire by the Silver Pheasant Martial Arts field. Your purpose is to kill me, right? Lin Sun paced and approached them. The two black-clothed men were exposed, and Lin Sun took the initiative to approach them. They were shocked and angry, but at the same time, a strong uneasiness rose in their hearts. Something was not right. How could this boy be so fearless? Whoosh! Almost in an instant, the two almost tacitly chose to escape at the first time, and they ran in two different directions at an extremely fast speed. Only Lin Sun knew that this was a test. It seemed that they were running away, but they just wanted to see how he would react. If there was danger, they would leave completely, and if they found out that he was bluffing, they would come back at once. It had to be said that these two were extremely vigilant and cautious, and their rich combat experience was by no means comparable to ordinary people. However, they ignored one thing. Lin Sun had been sitting and waiting tonight, and he took the initiative to show up at this moment instead of retreating. How could it be possible that he just wanted to scare them? Whoosh! Almost at the same time, Lin Sun also moved at a faster speed. He performed ice dragon steps and suddenly swept towards one of the black-clothed men. Boom! In the night, The black-clothed man suddenly felt cold all over. He looked up almost subconsciously and saw a dazzling ancient seal falling from the sky, tearing the darkness apart. Succubus seal. But unlike in the past, the Swanee seal at this moment was like the true appearance of the divine bee Swanee. Its markings were clear, its eyes were wide open, and its might was monstrous. The black-clothed man's heart shook, and he didn't even have the time to react before his body was fiercely smashed onto the ground. The bones and tendons in his entire body emitted cracking sounds as he bled from all 7 apertures. Boom! A huge crater appeared on the ground, and the black-robed man's body twitched as he lay in the crater. It was as if he had been smashed flat, and he couldn't stand up. This shocked and terrified him. He was an expert at the upper reincarnation development realm who had dominated the world for many years. How could he have imagined that he would be beaten down with just one blow? Damn it! He struggled with all his might, and his entire body was suffused with divine radiance. He was just about to stand up when his backbone was stomped into pieces, and he couldn't help but let out a shrill cry while he saw stars. This kind of power was so terrifying that he couldn't believe that a young man at the Tao Insight Realm could possess it. His entire body went cold, and he was completely terrified. He had a premonition that he had made a mistake in this operation, and that he had encountered a monster he couldn't face. Stay put. Lin Sun gave him another kick, which almost smashed the black-robed man's head. His eyes rolled back, and he fainted completely. In another direction, the black-robed man's companion was fleeing. At the same time, he secretly decided that if he found that the young man didn't catch up with him, he would immediately kill him. However, when he looked back and saw that his companion was smashed to the ground by one blow and couldn't stand up, he was so frightened that his soul almost flew out of his body. Boom! He didn't dare to hesitate and began to flee frantically. He was really frightened. He knew how powerful his companion was, but now he was knocked down by one blow, which was too terrifying. Damn it! Where did this little monster come from? It's a dark and windy night, and it's a killing night. My friend, it'll be a pity if you miss such a scene. Suddenly, a voice sounded in his ear, and the black-robed man was so shocked that his whole body stiffened. He had fled in advance, but how could this young man catch up with him? My little friend, we're just entrusted by someone, and we're not from the Silver Pheasant martial arts field. I hope you'll be merciful and let me go. The black-robed man was completely panicked and shouted. However, his behavior was just the opposite. When he spoke, he suddenly shot out a dazzling bloody light, which was as sharp as an awl, and went straight to Lin Sun's throat. Buzz! The bloody light swept through the air, making a strange sound that could take away one's soul, which was extremely strange. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and didn't want to touch it. At the same time, he displayed the Basha prohibition and the Swanee seal. The bloody light was first imprisoned and suddenly stayed in the void, and then it was smashed by the terrible Swanee seal. Light rain swirled. At the same time, Lin Sun had already rushed forward with ice drake steps and punched. With a bang, the black-robed man was hit and fell directly to the ground more than 10 meters away. He fell down with a broken head and broken teeth. He was completely terrified. Was this still a young man in Tao Insight Realm? How could he have such terrible power? Even the top talents in the world couldn't be more powerful than him, right? With one blow, his companion was suppressed. Now, with another blow, even he was knocked down. This made him completely collapse, and his hands and feet were cold. Lin Sun picked him up, turned back, and came to another black-robed man. Then he began to search for the spoils. Just a moment later, Lin Sun's face was a little gloomy. These were 2 old guys in reincarnation developing realm. But apart from some miscellaneous spiritual materials, they didn't even have a piece of spiritual marrow. Weren't they too poor? When Lin Sun crippled Dong Hai, the person in charge of the Silver Pheasant martial arts field, he had already expected that his opponents would definitely not let it go. For this reason, he specially waited tonight, but he didn't expect that the 2 opponents who came had no loot at all. This made Lin Sun very dissatisfied, and his eyes became unkind. He said, I don't need to know the reason. I just want to know whether the silver pheasant martial arts field sent you here." A moment later, Lin Sun carried the two corpses and left the street, disappearing into the distant night. Swish! Just as Lin Sun left, a dignified and slender figure floated over. He stood there, looked at the battlefield for a while, and then looked in the direction of Lin Sun's departure. In such a short time, two practitioners in reincarnation developing realm have been defeated by you. You are stronger than I expected. His eyes burst with brilliant brilliance, and his thin lips were slightly pursed. An unprecedented boiling fighting intent rose in his heart. This man was Fong Lin Han, the future leader of the Baji Saber Nunnery. "Boy, wait and see. No matter how reluctant you are, I will have a good fight with you sooner or later." A quarter of an hour later, a fire suddenly broke out in the silver pheasant martial arts field. The fire rushed into the sky and dispersed the night, causing a disturbance. The fire was extremely fierce. It was not extinguished until the second half of the night, leaving a mess on the ground. The whole martial arts field was seriously damaged. Lin Sun had already returned to the inn. The fire that burned down the silver pheasant martial arts field did come from his arm. As the saying went, it was impolite not to reciprocate. He had reminded and warned Dong Hai, who had been crippled before, but Dong Hai obviously didn't intend to swallow it, so he sent two killers to retaliate tonight. Under such circumstances, how could Lin Sun bear it? This fire was a lesson to the silver pheasant martial arts field. If Dong Hai still didn't intend to stop in this case, Lin Sun's next step would only be more ruthless. Early the next morning, Lin Sun woke up for meditation. As if nothing had happened, he walked out with Xia Xiaochong. He was going to exchange for some mid-grade concentration jades and then find a martial arts field to practice martial arts and earn spiritual marrow. I have fully grasped the mystery of Yazi's fury. The next step is to comprehend the 8th change of 9 changes of Tribulation Dragon, Wind-Mocking Eyes. Walking the bustling street, Lin Sun thought silently. Last night, when dealing with the two black-robed men in reincarnation developing realm, he used the power of Yazi's fury, which doubled his fighting capacity in an instant. Only then could he suppress them easily. Otherwise, if he wanted to do this in the past, he would need the help of Broken Blade or Insignificant Bow. However, to Lin Sun's surprise, after his meditation last night, he found that Wind-Mocking Eyes, the 8th change of 9 changes of Tribulation Dragon, was not a kind of martial arts inheritance, but a strange skill to see through heaven and earth and explore acupoints and pulse. It was like the way of feng shui. However, with Wind-Mocking Eyes, one could see through the falsehood directly and see the hidden treasure land under the mountains and rivers of the world. What was a treasure land? The place where spiritual veins converged. Similarly, some places where amazing spiritual treasures, strange objects, opportunities, and spiritual objects were hidden could also be called treasure lands, such as various rare mineral veins, mysterious spiritual sources, and so on. Spiritual marrow and concentration jades, which were often seen in the world, were also excavated from spiritual veins. In short, Wind-Mocking Eyes was a kind of wonderful skill specially prepared for exploring acupoints and pulse. But what troubled Lin Sun was that he needed to go to the deep mountains and forests to practice and comprehend the mystery of this secret skill. Only in this way could he feel the mystery of Wind-Mocking Eyes most directly and achieve the purpose of exploring acupoints and pulse. It seems that I can only practice the 9 strikes of shaking heaven first. In Yin capital, Lin Sun could only put aside the practice of 9 changes of Tribulation Dragon for the time being. Big news, big news. Last night, the silver pheasant martial arts field burst into fire and was almost burned down. Even the warehouse was burned down. It is said that this is probably the revenge of the enemies of the silver pheasant martial arts field. On the street, people from the Wind-Talking clan were spreading the news, which caused an uproar among the passers-by. The Wind-Talking clan was known as the most well-informed clan in the ancient Desolation territory. They had pointed ears, sunken eyes, light green skin, and a pair of bright and beautiful wings on their back. Their vitality was extremely tenacious. They had extraordinary insight talent, were good at collecting and sorting out intelligence, and were born to inquire and spread all kinds of secrets and the hottest news. There was a witty saying in the ancient Desolation territory that wherever something big happened, there must be strong figures of the wind-talking clan. They always wanted to make big news, so they ran faster than anyone else. Chapter 798. This was the Windtalker clan, a very unique clan. If one wanted to inquire about something, it was absolutely the right choice to go to the Windtalker clan. Similarly, if one wanted to spread any news, the Windtalker clan could easily do it. Their big mouth was famous throughout the ancient Desolation territory. Of course, the Windtalker clan was only responsible for collecting and spreading news. As for the authenticity of the news, they would not check it. Sometimes, some false rumors would attract the abuse of many practitioners who thought that they were hearsay and spread rumors to confuse the public. But most of the time, the news spread by the Windtalker clan was still very reliable. It's strange. Yesterday, the Silver Pheasant Martial Dojo staged a brilliant duel that allowed a mysterious youth to rise powerfully and beat Chung Lishue's record in one go, causing a sensation in the entire arena. But why did the Silver Pheasant Martial Dojo catch fire last night? Hearing the news from the Windtalker clan, many practitioners were surprised. Hey, maybe it's some competitors of the Silver Pheasant martial arts field. After all, people of the same trade are enemies, and there are dozens of martial arts fields in Yin capital. Competition and confrontation are inevitable. Some people made inferences and took pleasure in Lin's misfortune. Hearing these comments, Lin Sun looked calm, but he felt a little strange in his heart. How could he expect that what he did would make other martial arts fields take the blame? But this was also good. At least the Silver Pheasant martial arts field would not publicize such a great shame, even if they hated him to the core. If so, it would be no different from slapping his own face, and only the Silver Pheasant martial arts field would lose face. It's God's will. I didn't plan to go to the Silver Pheasant martial arts field today, but it happened to be on fire. Xia Xiaochong snickered. This innocent girl had no idea that this fire was actually caused by Lin Sun, who was beside her. It's indeed God's will. Lin Sun also laughed. With his hands behind his head, he strolled leisurely on the busy street with a thought-provoking smile. Thousand Crane's martial arts field. With the experience of fighting in the Silver Pheasant martial arts field, Lin Sun signed up and then went on the stage to fight. Tempering one's martial Dao was different from killing one's enemies. One needed to spar and fight against true experts, and from there, one would be able to temper the true essence of one's martial Dao in battle. This was also commonly known as feeding moves. In some ancient sects, there would even be special instructing elders that would spar with their disciples and provide meticulous guidance. Thus, the disciples would be able to grasp the essence of a certain secret technique in the shortest amount of time possible. Obviously, this was destined to be an extravagant hope for Lin Sun. Although there were many martial arts fields in Yin capital, and there was no lack of top-notch experts, there were very few who could fight against Lin Sun. In desperation, Lin Sun could only suppress his own strength and practice martial arts. Moreover, with the lesson he'd learned in the Silver Pheasant martial arena, he'd become extremely low profile this time, and he'd rest every time he won a battle. After winning 20 matches, the contestants would receive their rewards and leave. Then, they would move to another martial arts arena to compete on the stage. Sure enough, the attention he received was significantly reduced, and he no longer received any trouble when he received his reward. In the next few days, Lin Sun spent his time in various martial arts fields in Yindu, which was quite fulfilling. During this period, although he hadn't met any opponents who really made him feel pressured, he'd seen all kinds of secret fighting methods. Moreover, the experts of different tribes were good at fighting in different ways, which was an eye-opener for Lin Sun and benefited a lot from it. For example, experts of the Magma Fire tribe would turn into torrential magma once they fought. The waves of fire were like tides, covering the sky and incinerating the void. It was extremely violent and overbearing. Experts of the Dreamweaver tribe were good at soul attacks. The secret methods they used could weave real illusory attacks, which were illusory and illusory, but could kill people invisibly. Experts of the Heavenly Wood Rot-Tan tribe were the most difficult to deal with. They had the best self-recovery ability in the world and could be reborn from a drop of blood. That was to say, even if they were killed until only a drop of blood was left, as long as they were given a chance, they could regenerate their body. In addition, there were the Cyan Flower Demon tribe who were good at using poison, the Misty Shadow tribe who could hide, the Cloud Dream tribe who could manipulate fierce beasts to fight, and so on. Fighting with them invisibly broadened Lin Sun's horizons, allowing him to understand and learn a lot of things. This also made Lin Sun sigh with emotion. The ancient Desolation territory was indeed vast and vast, with tens of thousands of clans. Each clan had its own talent, so they could survive in the cruel competition until now. Brother Lin, are you really not going to play with me? In the inn, Fong Linhan asked with a smile. These days, as long as he came back from the martial arts field of Yen City, he would pester Lin Sun and insist on fighting with him, which gave Lin a headache. Fong Linhan seemed to know that Lin Sun wouldn't agree so easily, so he suddenly changed the topic and said, "By the way, there was a shocking news today. It said that a shocking battle broke out in Starfall Peak in the depths of Purple Ox Mountain. Ku Tong was almost killed. He was seriously injured and fled. When he spoke up to hear, a wisp of a strange expression arose in his eyes. Do you know who did this?" Lin Sun was stunned. Who? Fong Linhan's expression became more and more strange, and it carried an indescribable feeling. He seemed to be admiring and yearning. After a while, he said, "The current saintess of Xianjian school, Ji Xingyao." Lin Sun was shocked. It's her. He really couldn't calm down. Xianjian school was reputed to be the first orthodoxy in Shiheng territory, and as the saintess, Ji Xingyao was a peerless woman. She even faintly had the bearing of a leader of the younger generation in Shiheng territory. However, Lin Sun still didn't expect that Ji Xingyao, who also belonged to the younger generation, could defeat a half-step king realm expert. Lin Sun had personally witnessed Ku Tong's strength. Even among half-step king realm experts, he was an extremely powerful figure. But he almost died in the battle with Ji Xingyao, and in the end, he fled. What level has her cultivation reached? Lin Sun couldn't help but ask. Fong Linhan sighed. I only know that a year ago, there was news that she defeated a successor disciple of reincarnation developing realm in Xianjian school with the cultivation of Tao Insight realm, which caused a sensation in the entire Xianjian school. That successor disciple of reincarnation developing realm is not an ordinary figure. His name is Ing Yunchong, and he comes from the Winged Dragon clan. He is extremely talented and is quite famous in Shiheng territory. But Ji Xingyao was able to defeat Ing Yunchong with the cultivation of Tao Insight realm. It can be imagined how terrifying this woman's foundation is. Lin Sun couldn't help but be moved because he himself had such ability, so he was very clear about how strong a foundation was needed to kill an enemy with a higher realm. I didn't expect that there would be such a figure in this world. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. In this way, Yu Lingkong, the holy son from the pure land of longevity in southern Xian world, is definitely not weaker than Ji Xingyao. Fong Linhan added, however, I heard that the reason why Ji Xingyao was able to defeat Ku Tong this time is that her foundation is indeed strong enough. But more importantly, she used a broken holy treasure that has been passed down for a long time. I see. Lin Sun suddenly felt a lot more relaxed. The insignificant bow and blue sky arrow in his hands could also kill a half-step king. If Ji Xingyao also won by relying on similar treasures, it would not be too shocking. Of course, even so, it still gave Lin Sun a wake-up call and made him realize that in this ancient desolation realm, he was not the only one who had a trump card. As for the other peerless geniuses like Ji Xingyao and Yu Lingkong, they probably possessed forbidden treasures that were unknown to others as well. Lin Sun asked, by the way, why did Ji Xingyao suddenly appear in the fire spirit state? Did she also come for the opportunity on Starfall Peak? Fong Linhan shrugged and said, I'm not a member of the Windspeaker clan, so how could I know such information? However, I do know that even though Ji Xingyao defeated Old Freak Ku Tong this time, she returned empty-handed in the end. After a pause, he continued, What's more, there was a big change on Starfall Peak. The whole peak suddenly disappeared without a trace, as if it had been moved out of thin air. It was very strange. Lin Sun was stunned and immediately realized that it might have something to do with Xiaohao, who was dormant in the star egg. At the thought of Xiaohao, Lin Sun had an indescribable feeling. He had a strong hunch that when Xiaohao from the Star Nether Imperial family stopped dormancy and showed up, his brilliance was destined to be not inferior to that of Ji Xingyao and Yu Linkong. There is only one day left before the appointed time. If your master doesn't come, I will leave. Early in the morning, Lin Sun left the inn with Xia Xiaochong and went to the martial arts field in the city, as usual. Xia Xiaochong's voice was crisp and full of confidence. Don't worry. What my master hates most is to break an appointment. She won't do that. That's good. Lin Sun nodded. Besides the Yin capital martial arts field, Lin Sun had gone to almost all the other martial arts fields in the city. Now, there were only a few martial arts fields that he hadn't left his footprints in. Regretfully, up until now, he still hadn't encountered an opponent that could make Lin Sun feel pressured. Moreover, Lin Sun didn't intend to stay in Yin capital any longer. One of the important reasons he came to the ancient Desolation territory was to go to the Dongshan territory and inquire about Yun Qingbai, the successor of the Heavenly Sword sect, in order to prepare for his revenge. Under such circumstances, he didn't have the mood to stay in the fire spirit state, though it was unknown how far away from the Dongxing territory was. Pine Mist Martial Arts Field. Lin Sun and Xia Xiaochong walked in side by side. Chapter 799. The man was rather handsome. However, a wisp of gloominess appeared between his brows when he recognized Lin Sun, and a strand of indescribable rage or fear surged in his heart. The man was none other than Mo Feng, the descendant of Lingji's sect. When they were participating in the sect's trial on Mount Violet Ox, they were repeatedly teased by Lin Sun because of an apology, and they were so depressed and furious that they almost spat blood. But in the end, they still admitted defeat and didn't dare take revenge. Because even Yu Jianming greatly appreciated Lin Sun. So how could they have the courage to take revenge under such circumstances? However, Mo Feng had never imagined that he would actually encounter Lin Sun again in Yindu. You know this kid? The old man beside him spoke. He wore a sapphire blue Taoist robe, and his hair was coiled into a bun. His skin was glistening and smooth like a baby's, and he seemed like a sage. His name was Han Yinke, an elder of Lingji's sect at the upper stage of the reincarnation developing realm. At the same time, he was Mo Feng's master. Yes, Mo Feng nodded. He thought for a moment and said bitterly, Master, the reason our Lingji sect was ranked at the bottom in the sect competition a few days ago was because we were disturbed by this person during the trial. When he spoke up to hear, a wisp of deep guilt surged out from Mo Feng's heart, and he said, Now that I think about it, it was our fault in the first place. We inadvertently offended him and caused such a disaster. So it was because of this kid. That makes sense. Han Yinke had a strange expression on his face, and his voice carried an indescribable tone. This stunned Mo Feng. He'd originally thought that Han Yinke would definitely be infuriated or reprimand him, but he'd never imagined that he would have such a reaction. The most astounding thing was that Han Yinke actually raised his hand and patted his shoulder in the next moment, and he comforted him warmly. It's not a loss for all of you to lose to him. This kid's combat strength is extremely terrifying and ferocious. It's already very good that he didn't kill all of you. Mo Feng was slightly stunned. What's going on? Why has the master, who's usually extremely strict, become so easy to talk to? Moreover, he's comforting me for the first time. Mo Feng had the urge to cry. How many years has it been since my master, who's always been strict to me, comforted me like this? At this moment, Han Yang's emotions were incomparably complicated. He had seen Lin Sun before. At the foot of Starfall Peak, he had seen with his own eyes how Lin Sun showed great power and climbed up Starfall Peak. Almost no one dared to stop him along the way. The most incredible thing was that even old monster Ku Tong failed to kill the young man in the end. Moreover, the young man escaped with a treasure ship that seemed to be a holy artifact. Under such circumstances, he naturally understood when he found out that his disciple had been played by Lin Sun, because he knew very well that it was utterly impossible for Mo Feng to be a match for that young man. Suddenly, Han Yinke suddenly recalled something. The treasured vessel in the young man's possession was a miraculous and unfathomable treasure, and it seemed to be a saint artifact of legend. It was even capable of avoiding the suppression of the ancient divine formation on Starfall Peak. When he thought up to here, a wisp of greed couldn't help but surge into Han Yang's heart, and he instructed right away. You stay here and keep a close eye on this kid. I have urgent matters to attend to, so I'll return to the sect first. He had to return to the sect to discuss it with the higher-ups of the sect. If he was able to seize this opportunity to seize a saint artifact for the sect, then it would absolutely not be inferior to obtaining an enormous fortune. A saint artifact possessed extraordinary and peerless divine might and was boundlessly terrifying. If he was able to obtain it, then it would absolutely be able to allow his sect to become eminent amongst the 4 sects and 3 clans, and become the true overlord of the Fire Soul Prefecture. I must make the best use of my time. I can't miss this opportunity. The more Han Yinke thought about it, the more the greed in his heart burned, and he showed signs of being unable to control himself. He wished for nothing more than to make a move right away. But he restrained himself in the end because he knew that he couldn't forget this matter, and he had to make a meticulous plan. After all, that young man seemed to be only at the heavenly insight realm, yet he was able to escape old monster Ku Tong's attack. If he was unable to capture the young man with a single strike, then the consequences would truly be difficult to predict. Master, what are you doing? Mo Feng wasn't an idiot. Since he was able to become an outstanding figure in the younger generation of the Lingji sect, then in terms of natural talent and wisdom, ordinary cultivators were far from being able to compare to him. At the first possible moment, he noticed that his master's decision at this moment was probably related to Lin Sun, who just entered the Pine Mist Dojo. You don't have to know about all of this. You just have to keep a close eye on that young man and keep track of his tracks at all times. Remember, you must not alert him. Han Yinke instructed in a solemn manner before leaving hastily. On the other hand, Mo Feng's heart jerked when he saw this, and a wisp of a bad premonition surged into his heart. Master seems to be returning to the sect to ask for assistance to deal with that young man. He took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the shock in his heart, and then he suddenly gritted his teeth and flashed into the Pine Mist Dojo. Pine Mist Dojo. At the resting area, a young woman with a graceful figure and a chilly bearing sat silently at the corner. She wore a black dress, and a mask that was silver like snow covered the upper half of her face, and only a wisp of perfectly curved and plump red lips and a sharp chin that was snow white and crystalline were revealed. She sat there casually, causing her to seem cold and mysterious, and her clear eyes were crystalline and translucent like gems and tranquil like the water of a lake. Young miss, hiding here isn't a solution. All the elders of the sect are anxiously waiting for you to return. An azure-clothed old woman at the side sighed lightly and was slightly helpless. I've said since the beginning that I won't meet anyone before the battle of the world, but they just wouldn't listen. Since it's like this, then let them have a headache. The young woman spoke casually with a voice that was chilly like snow and melodious like the sound of nature. Her words were spoken casually, yet carried a charm that caused others to be unable to go against her. This caused her to possess a terrifying, imposing aura, and even if she sat there casually, she still emanated a lonely feeling that caused others to be unable to disrespect her. The azure-clothed old woman felt even more helpless, but she seemed to dote on the young woman before her, and she wanted to speak, yet hesitated many times before stopping in the end. I'm very angry. Suddenly, The young woman sat up straight while a wisp of rage shot out from her eyes that were clear and brilliant like the stars. I was just a little bit away from being able to uncover the expert that was hiding within the ancient sacred formation on Starfall Peak, but he still escaped in the end. She puckered her plump red lips while her entire body emanated a piercingly cold and bone-piercing aura. Since I started cultivating until now, it's the first time I've failed. If I find out who that fellow is, then I'll surely give him a beating. The azure-clothed old woman seemed to be slightly anxious and hurriedly said, "Young miss, Starfall Peak has already vanished. This matter is in the past, but you must not get into a dead end." "Oh," replied the young woman before standing up. At that instant, she was like a lotus that had emerged from the water, and her graceful figure was completely revealed. Her legs were long and slender. Her waist was slender, and even her black dress was unable to conceal the perfect lines of her figure. On her face, even though half of her peerless face was covered by a mask, one could see that this young lady possessed a beauty that could stun the world just by looking at her translucent skin, tall nose bridge, and curved, plump red lips. This was a type of aura that was chilly like snow, tranquil, and otherworldly. It was extremely unique and striking, and it caused others to feel ashamed of their inferiority and not dare arouse a trace of disrespect towards her from afar. "Young miss, what do you intend to do?" The azure-clothed old woman was stunned. "I'm naturally going to ascend the arena to have some fun," said the young woman casually. "You intend to fight with other cultivators here?" The azure-clothed old woman was flabbergasted and speechless. She was too clearly aware of how terrifying the resources and reserves possessed by this young woman were. Not to mention this tiny martial arena. Not to mention the Fire Spirit Prefecture. Even amongst the younger generation of the entire Westlake world, there were absolutely only a handful of people that possessed the qualifications to be a match for this young woman. But now, she intended to ascend the arena to fight with other cultivators in a martial arena that could only be considered as a first class in Yen capital. This made the others slightly at a loss whether to laugh or cry. "I'm just playing. Otherwise, I'll be too depressed in my heart, and I have to vent it." The young woman in a black dress spoke casually, and then she flashed swiftly towards the distance. Her figure was like a solitary swan that stood out from the crowd, and she had an otherworldly and aloof feeling. "It's good to have some fun. If I can vent the depression in my heart, then perhaps I'll change my mind and return to the sect." The azure-clothed old woman pondered. Bang! In the arena, Lin Sun defeated another opponent. This was already his 19th consecutive victory, and he won very calmly from the beginning until the end. Yes, calmly. Since the beginning of ascending the arena, he'd suppressed his strength and concentrated on tempering his martial arts, so he was very indifferent to victory and defeat. It couldn't be said to be exciting or attractive, and he merely sought to temper his martial arts. The 20th battle was about to begin. Lin Sun rested at the side, and he was thinking in his heart about how many mid-grade, congealing spirit jades the spiritual essence he'd earned these days could be exchanged for. Suddenly, Lin Sun seemed to feel something. He raised his head and looked at the other side of the arena, where a graceful figure in a silver-white mask came. She wore a black dress with a tall and slender body. Her waist was like silk, and her shoulders were like knives. Her clear eyes were as quiet as the stars in the sky. She came to the arena, took out a cyan hairband, and tied her long black hair behind her head, revealing a white and slender gooseneck. Her movements were not fast, but there was a kind of freehand rhythm and beauty, leisurely and leisurely, pleasing to the eye. Is this my opponent in the 20th battle? Lin Sun's intuition was extremely keen. He immediately judged that this girl in a black dress with a cold temperament and quiet temperament should be a good opponent. This finally aroused a trace of interest in Lin Sun's heart. It was like meeting a bosom friend in wine or a rival in chess, which even made him look forward to it. These days, he hadn't met a worthy opponent, which was a pity in his heart. Now the appearance of this girl in a black dress would undoubtedly make a difference. "I hope you won't let me down," Lin Sun murmured in his heart. When the girl in a black dress stepped onto the arena, her black hair was tied up, and her figure was aloof, with a kind of valiant and extraordinary posture. She also noticed Lin's son. At first, she didn't take him seriously, but soon she felt that he was a very different guy. Even though the aura emanated from his entire body was ordinary, it was mellow and smooth, and it carried a feeling of returning to simplicity. It was otherworldly, and this could be considered to be rare amongst the younger generation. He could be called a genius figure. This made the girl in a black dress a little surprised. She just wanted to relieve the sulkiness in her heart and go to the arena to play. Unexpectedly, it seemed that she met a good opponent. I hope you'll be very good. Chapter 800. Neither Lin's son nor the girl in black dress knew that the opponent's thoughts were exactly the same as his. Before long, the battle began. However, to Lin's son's surprise, the opponent was very confident and stood still as if waiting for Lin's son to take the initiative to attack. He's really proud. Lin's son laughed in his heart. At the same time, the girl in black dress also frowned. This guy seemed to be very fearless. Was he waiting for her to attack? But the point was he really sure that he could block her attack? He's really arrogant. The girl in black dress curled her lips with interest. It was the first time for her to meet such a character. When she fought before, all her opponents were extremely cautious, but none of them was as arrogant as the guy in front of her. Thus, a strange scene appeared on the arena. The bell for the battle had already rung, but the man and the woman were still standing in the same place, facing each other, not moving at all. Some of the practitioners who were paying attention to this side were all dissatisfied. What time was it? And he was still pretending to be mysterious. Young people nowadays were becoming more and more indecent. Brother Lin, beat her. Don't keep demeanor just because she is a woman. Xia Xiaochong shouted under the arena. My master said that this is not demeanor, but a slander to women's dignity. Real women don't need this kind of modesty. On the arena, Lin's son was speechless. On the opposite side, the beautiful face of the girl in black dress, covered by the silver mask, also showed a touch of astonishment. Sister, come on. Brother Lin's son can't wait for someone to defeat him. Xia Xiaochong shouted again, as if she wanted to see the world in chaos. Shut up. Lin's son was a little flustered and exasperated. What did she mean by, I can't wait to be defeated? How could she talk like that? What if she misunderstood? The girl in black dress was annoyed in her heart. This little girl must be ironic, thinking that no one could defeat her brother Lin's son. My friend, if you don't fight, don't blame me for being rude. The girl in black dress said coldly. Her voice was as clear as spring water, as sweet as the sound of nature, with a sense of lonely ice and snow. She was really speechless. She secretly decided that she must give this boy some pain later and see if he still dared to be arrogant. It's better that you're welcome. It wasn't easy for Lin's son to meet a seemingly good opponent. Naturally, he was eager for the opponent to go all out. You, the girl in the black dress, secretly ground her teeth and glared at Lin with her clear eyes. Very well, don't cry for mercy later. Then, her entire demeanor suddenly turned cold and frightening. An invisible force began to emit from her body. Feeling the change of the girl's breath, Lin Sun's eyes brightened. He was definitely a top-notch figure among his peers. This caused him to feel even more delighted and expectant, and he said with a smile, cry and beg for mercy? You should keep those words to yourself. At the resting area in the distance, the expression of the old woman in azure became strange, and it carried a wisp of pity. That young man is really courageous. He actually dares to speak to the young miss in such a manner. The young woman's aura grew even colder while her clear eyes seethed with a terrifying glow. Obviously, she'd been infuriated. Don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. She snorted coldly and took the initiative to attack. As she clapped her hands, the whole arena was shrouded in a misty and illusory mist. This arena is covered by the spiritual mist of concealment. Even if you want to admit defeat, you have to go through me first. The voice of the girl in the black dress was cold. Obviously, she had decided to teach Lin Sun a hard lesson. In order to prevent Lin Sun from admitting defeat halfway, she used this secret method. But the more it was like this, the happier Lin Sun was, and he said, "It couldn't be better. I'm still worried about what if you run away in a panic." Although these words came from the heart, it was no different from a blatant provocation to the girl in the black dress. She didn't intend to hurt Lin Sun at first. After all, it was too ungracious for her to bully a strange young man with her identity. But now, she had put all these thoughts behind her, and the only thought in her mind was to beat the young man hard. Boom! Without hesitation, the girl in the black dress stepped out and waved her slender hand in the void. A touch of holy and fierce light emerged, which was as brilliant as a divine sword and shattered the void. A single blow aroused Lin Sun's fighting spirit. With a frightening luster bursting out of his eyes, he raised his hand and slapped out. The applause rumbled like thunder, like the shouting of gods and demons, accompanied by a lot of terrible light. There was a ripple in the heart of the girl in the black dress. As soon as she made a move, she knew that she had met an extremely strong opponent. It really surprised her that there was such a figure in the Tao Insight realm. Crack! With a graceful figure, she walked in the mist. With a gentle stroke of her finger, she easily resolved Lin Sun's attack and obliterated it in a brilliant glow. Lin Sun's black eyes were as deep as the abyss, and he was surprised. This woman was really an extremely rare and outstanding master. He didn't suppress and reserve his strength anymore. His whole body was roaring, and his whole body was covered with green divine light. He rushed forward with the ice dragon steps. His change was amazing. A moment ago, he seemed calm and aloof, but now he was like a demon with a completely different momentum. Boom! The force of his fist shook the heaven and earth and disrupted the void. It carried an unparalleled power that could sweep through the world, and it was extremely powerful. The girl in the black dress was moved, and the annoyance in her heart disappeared. She realized that this opponent was far stronger than she had imagined. When did such a genius appear in the fire spirit state? Although the girl in the black dress thought quickly, her movements weren't slow. Her figure floated like a green lotus. Around her body, the shadows of spiritual swords were reflected. They seemed to be real and dazzling, and they were suffused with sharp sword intent that soared into the sky, causing the weather to change. Clatter, the spiritual swords fluttered in the void like a rain of light, and they seemed to be able to mince yin and yang and annihilate the 5 elements. The killing intent filled the whole area. Lin Sun's fist force was easily crushed, and it turned into turbulence and dispersed. The entire arena was shaking and trembling. Lin Sun was finally moved. Only a few breaths of time had passed since the battle began, yet the might and ability revealed by the girl in the black dress had shocked and surprised him many times, and it exceeded his expectations. She was absolutely the strongest person of the same generation that Lin Sun had encountered since he started cultivating, and she made him feel oppressive force that assaulted his face. After all, he'd already stepped foot onto the supreme path of the Tao Insight realm, and he was like a king that could look down upon all his opponents of the same cultivation realm. He could be said to be invincible amongst his peers. But now, a young girl in a black dress was able to go head-to-head with him. Did this mean that she'd already stepped foot onto the supreme path as well? Rumble. The battle erupted on the arena while divine radiance blazed. One was like a demon god, while the other was like an immortal that was banished from the heavens, and a world-shocking battle erupted between the two of them. A rain of light fluttered while the sound of the Tao rumbled, and the void collapsed while numerous terrifying phenomena appeared. It could be said to be unparalleled. The arena was shaking. Even if the defensive formation was activated to the limit, it was only barely able to resist the impact of the aftershock of the battle. In the distant spectator area, countless cultivators were alarmed and looked over in unison. After that, all of them fell into great shock and were flabbergasted. It was too world-shocking. Such a battle caused the heavens and the earth to show signs of disorder. The wind and clouds dimmed, and the impetus shook the 9 heavens. Compared to this, the battles in the other areas of the arena instantly seemed inconspicuous, and they were like fireflies that were unable to compete with the brilliance of the sun and moon. Later on, all the battles on the arenas in the other areas of the Pine Mist martial arts arena stopped, and the cultivators that were fighting looked over in unison. The higher-ups of the Pine Mist martial arts arena were alarmed as well, and they showed themselves successively. This battle was too unparalleled and dazzling. A man and a woman competed for supremacy, and every single move they made emanated might that could incinerate mountains and boil seas. Their peerless bearing caused some of the older experts to feel ashamed of their inferiority and be shocked repeatedly. There was no doubt that this was absolutely an unprecedented battle at the peak, and it was too rare. A peerless battle like this had practically never occurred in Yin capital. At this moment, Lin Sun and the young girl in a black dress had become the center of attention, and the entire Pine Mist martial arts arena fell into an atmosphere of shock. No one could imagine why such an unparalleled battle would suddenly erupt today, nor did they know who the man and woman were or why they were so peerless and formidable. But everyone was clearly aware that no matter who won or lost this battle, it was bound to cause a stir in the world when it came to an end. In the spectator area, the green-clothed old woman had a solemn expression while a shocking glow shot out from her eyes, and she stared fixedly at the two parties that were fighting in the arena. At this moment, she didn't feel pity for Lin Sun any longer, and she even realized that her thoughts from before were wrong. She'd overestimated the young man. When did a little fellow that can fight the young miss appear in the Fire Spirit province? Which clan is he from? The green-clothed old woman's mood rose and fell. Only she knew clearly how terrifying the impact of today's incident would be if it were to be spread out, and it would cause a mighty uproar in the entire West Sea region. Fortunately, the young miss identity hasn't been exposed. No matter how great the impact is, it isn't to the extent of affecting the young miss. The green-clothed old woman took a deep breath and placed her attention onto Lin Sun. She had a strong feeling of curiosity. Who exactly is this kid? Xia Xiaochong was stunned like a stunned goose, and he muttered after quite some time. Will big brother Lin Sun lose this time? Bang! On the arena, Lin Sun was fighting, and every single move he made carried the bearing of a grandmaster. Even though he was a young man, he possessed the spirit to look down upon the world, and he was steady and overbearing like a king. The young girl in a black dress felt extremely great pressure, yet she didn't panic and dealt with it calmly. Only her clear eyes grew even more brilliant, and her entire body flowed with a mysterious and holy sheen, and she didn't hold back any longer.